Happy Winged Eagle Podcast Saturday, everybody. How's it going? GoodMicWork commentaries back at you. Today is kind of a special episode, sort of. This is the 10-year anniversary of my very first ever stupid upload to YouTube. April 11th, 2010, I fucked around one day and threw something up on YouTube, and that continued to snowball for the next, several years into what we are today. So I'm going to go into a lot here in terms of that story. We'll talk about a whole bunch of cool things tonight, but really I've only been going strong on YouTube for like 5 years, but technically I'm now a 10-year YouTube veteran, so I thought we would come up. Since this day happens to fall on a Saturday, we'll make it a primetime evening edition of the Winged Eagle Podcast. We'll discuss the things like we normally do, the wrestling news and the results of the week and anything else going on in the world. And, we'll hang out. We'll toast a couple of drinks. I'll answer a ton of questions here in the chat, over on Twitter, on Patreon, wherever you guys have managed to send them. And we'll just kind of have a casual, chilled out, hangout, quarantine wrestling discussion tonight. So I hope you guys are having a great weekend. And thank you for joining me. This is going to be a lot of fun. I just want to say right off the bat, first of all, sound check. I can hear myself. Good. I see a ton of super chats rolling in right away. I'm going to backtrack and nail all those in just a few minutes. I just want to get some pleasantries out of the way first, and one of those things being, that of letting you guys know what to expect in this episode. So we're going to shoot the shit a little bit at first for the first few minutes. I'm in no rush to complete this because the world is different right now, and we are all kind of confined to our houses. So what's the fucking rush, So I'll kind of hang out here for the beginning, let people roll into the chat. We'll talk a little bit, mention a couple things about the channel. I'll shout out the patrons. We'll talk about this week's schedule, and then we will dive in to the wrestling news first. And it's a juicy week. I got to say, I was a little bit worried a week ago with this podcast on the horizon. I'm like, man, I hope we have enough to talk about for a 10-year anniversary show where we're going to be having fun. I hope there's enough material and stuff to get into. And I think that there is, because I've got a whole bunch of juicy tidbits going on in wrestling right now. So we definitely have enough to keep us busy this evening here on the channel. Also, for those of you who have not seen it, I did a random special episode, worked on it all week, had a very busy week, took Monday through Friday to put this thing together, and I've been teasing it that I was going to one day kind of give you guys an office tour of my setup and, where I produce my commentaries, and a look at all of my wrestling memorabilia and my media and my championship belts and anything wrestling related that I have. I thought it would make a fun kind of quarantine type of video. I've got extra time now to produce extra content, something that I would probably never have a chance to get done prior to this. So I thought it would be perfect to kind of upload that on the same day as my 10th anniversary. So if you would do me a favor, because these type of videos like my This Day in Histories, they tend to not get a lot of views up front, but they get a lot of views long term. So shoot over, the link is right in the description there. Give that video a like and a view for me and engage it. Maybe throw something in the comments, and I would definitely appreciate it. You guys are the best. I also want to kind of talk about the 10 years on YouTube. Now, like I said, technically this is the 10-year anniversary, but really I only consider myself kind of like a hardcore podcaster since 2015. That's when I started the website. That's when I started kind of formulating a schedule, because before it was just kind of a side hobby. I'd do it whenever I wanted. I wouldn't think twice about taking several weeks off, or in some cases in the early days, months off at a time, because it wasn't really important to me. It was just there. Yeah, I had some subscribers. Yeah, I had people that listened to me, but I had, more important things in my life at the time. So it was kind of a slow start there until I realized that I was developing a pretty decent fan base and I should start taking it a little bit more seriously. So that was when in 2015, I'm like, all right, time to get serious. Let's buy some equipment. Let's get a better computer. Let's get a microphone up in here and start doing, some higher quality stuff. And I feel like the last 5 years is when I've really built my audience. The first 5 was just kind of like me fucking around. So it's been a great 5 years, I'd say, on the channel, but the last 10, I only have 30,000 subscribers to show for it. It's not like I've got a whole lot to brag about. I'm proud of my audience. I love the following that I have, and I cannot believe the loyalty from some of you who have been with me for, most of you or a lot of you, the entire 10 years. So that's incredible. But sometimes I feel like I should have 3 or 4 more times subscribers than I do, and I'm not quite there yet. So let's hope the next 10 years can get us to where we need to be. But I'm certainly not going to, diminish what this actually means. A decade on YouTube is a long time. And I've told the story many times. Those of you who've been with me since the beginning, you're gonna have to sit through this one more time. But for those of you who don't know kind of how I got started on YouTube, it was just the most random shit ever. I'll set the quick scene for you. It was early 2010, like in January, and I had decided that I was going to make the move out to the West Coast, into California. I've been thinking about it for a long time. My family lives here in San Diego, and I'm out here so often visiting. This place is gorgeous, and I was like, I got to get over there. It's just a better place to live. So finally made the decision to bite the bullet and move to the West Coast. And I was a general manager of a restaurant group for like 10 years, and I was really burnt out, and I had saved my money, and I realized that, I'm going to move at the end of the summer. I could essentially quit my job now, work part-time as a bartender somewhere, and that will allow me the freedom to kind of plan the move, get everything paid for, figure out how I'm going to ship my shit in my car, and how this whole thing is going to, where I'm going to live when I get here, that sort of thing. Where am I going to work? So that was going to allow me the freedom to kind of, really put that whole transition from the East Coast to the West Coast together. So I don't have to work as much. I'm not working a 70-hour week job. So fast forward to around April, beginning of April, I decide I've got one of those little BlackBerry phones. It wasn't a BlackBerry, but it looked like one, had the keypad underneath. And I'm like, iPhones are all the rage. Everybody seems to have an iPhone now. I don't have AT&T. I have Verizon. And at the time, iPhones weren't available. So I was like, I'm going to cancel my account with Verizon. I'm going to hop over to AT&T and I'm going to get myself an iPhone. So I did. So one day on probably April 10th or 11th or whatever it was, I'm it's raining outside, and I'm laying on my couch on my back messing with the phone, like looking through it, like, oh, what the fuck, all the little features. I've never seen a phone that can do this much, and lo and behold, I come across a voice recorder. Now, around this time, I was also kind of getting into like watching YouTube. I had a little man cave, in a really big apartment that my wife and I at the time had. I had my own little separate area of the house, and I was kind of hanging out in there and chilling out after work, and I'd watch YouTube, and I was just kind of getting into watching YouTube. And of course, since I'm a wrestling fan, I started watching a lot of wrestling shit on YouTube, old matches and stuff that I have in my collection, as you guys saw today. But it was just, to me, so much easier just to be able to access it right online like that. And I had a lot of fun just searching random things. I was almost like amazed by, wow, there's so much good shit on here I can just watch for nostalgia. Well, because of that, I stumbled across videos of like people talking about wrestling on YouTube, like in front of a camera. And I don't remember who it was or which channels I saw. They're probably no longer in existence now, but I realized that there was a whole lot of dumbasses out there speaking with such confidence and certainty, and they knew nothing of the words that were flying out of their yapper. I couldn't believe it. And a lot of them were very pro TNA. WWE's going to be out of business in 6 months. Shit like that. That type of delusion was everywhere. And I'm like, you know what? I'm smarter than those dudes. And so that day that I was like laying on the couch, that's when it kind of hit me. I'm like, yeah, remember all those idiots you saw like talking smack on YouTube? What if I just record a few things? Hit the record button, blurted out some nonsense about TNA and how the fans annoyed me or whatever I said, uploaded it to YouTube, and it was terrible. My voice sounded terrible. It was horrible. The video's not even available anymore because I was worried about a copyright issue for some images that I used. But it was just bad. But for some reason, like I checked back the next day and it has like 200 or 300 views, which is kind of a lot for somebody with 0 subscribers. So that was kind of weird. The comments were mixed, but overwhelmingly positive. And I'm like, so then I did another one. And then I did another one. And next thing you know, I started gaining more of an audience. But then I had to move to California. So I took like many months off. I just disappeared. As far as I was concerned, I wasn't going to come back to it because I was living here now. I needed to focus on my job. But I was also lucky enough to stumble across my dream job in California. It's the only job I've ever had since I've lived here, where it basically gives me about 1/10 the amount of stress that my job back in the East Coast did, that would consume my life and my mind and make me fucking miserable inside. And I found this cushy dream job that pays well, that's not hard on my body or my mental spirit. And I realized that I have the time to continue YouTube if I want. So I kind of did that on the side. And then as we built a little bit of an audience here, I started getting a few videos that had shit tons of views for somebody of my size with only several thousand subscribers. And then around 2015, I'm like, okay, let's make this a podcast. Let's throw it up on the podcast sites. Let's get a website. Let's start building a brand here and start treating this seriously. And ever since, we've been growing and building since then. And it's been awesome, and it's been a lot of fun. And none of this would be possible without you guys hanging out with me, listening to my nonsense every week here on YouTube, whether it be on Mondays or Saturdays or whenever I'm here. It's been quite a ride. It's been a lot of fun. So that's kind of like my origin story. That's the genesis of GoodMicWork all the way back then. Kind of came up randomly. And even the name, when I had like a YouTube channel, I'm like, well, what should I call it? If I'm going to talk about wrestling, I need to have a name. And the only thing, I've told this story before too, I took the idea from the movie Superbad. And in the beginning of the movie, like Jonah Hill and Michael Cera, whatever their characters are named, they're on the phone talking about which like porn websites they're going to subscribe to the next year, and like Jonah Hill's got it all figured out. He's got a system for picking the right one, and Michael Cera has the idea. It's like, hey, if you're going to subscribe to these porn sites and your mom's going to get the bill, you should pick something that doesn't sound like it could be a porn site. Like it could be like the Perfect 10. He goes, that could be like a bowling website or something like that, or in AEW it could be a wrestling website. So I kind of took that thought and I was like, what could be considered like I should just name it after a wrestling term, but all the other wrestling terms were taken, like kayfabe this and shit like that. So I'm like, well, what the fuck? And I just decided GoodMicWork, like on a whim. And I'm like, yeah, that works. GoodMicWork. And then it kind of transitioned into GoodMicWork commentaries, and that's where I came up with it. So I spent literally no time or effort coming up with a name, literally thought about it for 5 minutes, and never even really loved the name that much. But once you're stuck with it, you're stuck with it. And I don't like to rebrand or anything like that. So we've made it work for us, and it's been fun. And that's kind of how it all got started. It got started completely by accident. In a lot of cases, that's the way some of YouTube channels go. So, up until 5 years ago, it was kind of a side hobby. And then since then, it felt like it's been a really big part of my life, to where it's been a second job. It now acts as a literal second job. I make a decent amount of money doing this. I have to file my taxes, and tell them what I make from YouTube. So it's literally a second job now. And I would really like it if it could be my primary income. I don't think it'll ever be my main income, because with me, with restaurant stuff, I can work in that forever. So, but I would like it to be, maybe my focal point, and that be my first job, and then I work something on the side instead of reversed the way it is now. Although with the pandemic, I'm currently unemployed, but provided this all subsides, I will be going back to work and resuming what I normally do, and the YouTube channel will be my second job again. So we'll see what the next 10 years holds. Hopefully, we can continue to have fun here and continue to be successful. And as long as you guys are hanging out, as long as you guys want me, I will be doing this as long as my personal schedule allows it to. And I don't see any changes, at least in the near future. So let's hope we get 10 more years. So there you go. I'll shut the fuck up now about that stuff. Let me backtrack just a second, answer a couple of super chats, and then we will jump into wrestling news after I do some Patreon shout outs and all that stuff. So anyway, first of all, way back at the beginning, Chris Miner, thank you very much. I am going to talk about this. Thank you for the $5. Did you see the new Brawl for All episode on Dark Side of the Ring? I thought it was good. I felt horrible for Bart at the end of it. Yeah, I did too, and that's on my notes. We will be getting into the Brawl for All later, and I did see the episode. It was entertaining, that's for sure. And it was a good come down after that crazy like Benoit episode. And New Jack. Steve Myers, man, thank you very much for the $10 super chat. First drink of the evening is on me. Well, thank you. I've got one open right here, Stella. So here's two. Cheers to you guys. Thank you for a full decade. We're entering our second decade on YouTube. Jesus Christ. Thank you, How Weezy, for the 10 years. Good to see a mod up in here. Appreciate that. And thanks for the $1.99. Did you get the IC belt on WWEshop.com? Yeah, I did. I almost forgot where I got it, but I just got it this past November. It was Black Friday. I was online, and I just saw that it was a pretty good deal, and I've always wanted to get it. It's just something you don't want to bite the bullet and buy. I'm not really that kind of person that really needs to buy. That's why I'm like my memorabilia video today. I have all this wacky shit. I don't have a ton of like really expensive stuff because I don't like to make big time purchases like that on a wrestling belt. But if I'm ever going to get it, I wasn't going to find it cheaper than I was that night. So I was like, all right, in a way I can justify it, because if I ever decide to buy it a year from now, it ain't going to be this cheap. Unless I wait till next Black Friday. So I did it, bought it, and finally it hangs in the background. It's really the only belt that I've ever truly wanted. So I doubt I'll be buying any more belts. Even though there's plenty that I would like to have, none that I would feel comfortable spending that kind of money on. Let me see, who's next? I went too far. I went way too far. There you go. Zane, thank you, man. Appreciate the $2 super chat. No comment, just a nice donation. You're the man. I always appreciate you hanging out with us. Nathan Hansen, good to see you, man. Appreciate the $2. Here's to 10 more years. Let's hope so. Cheers, brother. Yeah, if you guys, anytime you super chat with that little cheers emoji, I will take a drink. So try not to get me fucked up if y'all don't mind, because I got stuff to do later. Michael Cuomo, good to see you as well, man. Thank you for the $2 super chat and your patronage on Patreon. Ready for another 10 years after this? Yeah, let's hope so, man. I'm going to be in my 50s. Y'all, that's not good. I don't want to be in my 50s. In 10 years, let's just pretend I'm still in my 40s. Zia, thank you very much for the super chat. Hi, Greg, been listening to you since November 2010. Jesus, nobody knew what you looked like, only that you hated TNA Impact. Yeah, maybe my hatred for TNA Impact was a little bit strong. It was I felt like they made mistakes, and they were a company that sometimes left me scratching my head of how can people this dumb be running a company. But I don't think my hate was necessarily for them, because I'm a fan of anywhere, and I approve of any other wrestling company existing and giving a place for guys to go and make money. It was kind of like the delusion, the category 5 delusion that existed amongst the really anti-WWE haters. You see that now. It's recreated itself in AEW. Only this time I'm a little more rational, and I appreciate and enjoy AEW, and I don't let their idiot fan base get in the way of that, where that might have been the case back in the TNA Impact days, when you had these complete morons insisting that Vince McMahon's going to be homeless and living in a trailer in Alabama in 6 months because TNA is so good. I couldn't believe that stuff was coming out of the fans' mouths. And yeah, back then I was just, I didn't even have a camera. I don't even think the iPhone took video back then. Yeah, they didn't. I actually know it didn't. I'm not even sure. Yeah, I did take pictures, but I don't think it took video. Anyway, I wasn't doing any sort of, and plus, on an iPhone back then, the video would have been shitty. But yeah, I was kind of just, I kind of wanted to be the faceless guy. But then after I started on social media and stuff, I'm like, I don't want to be one of those guys that won't show their face. I'm not ashamed of what I look like. It's just I preferred being behind the camera. But after a while, I'm like, nah. I need to be in front of the camera. You guys have been hearing me all these years. It's nice to put a face with words, That's the way I feel. If it was somebody else, I'd want to see them. Chris. No, Ike, I'm sorry. Yeah, Ike Moore, thank you, man, for the $5. I remember your long rants on Hogan. What are your thoughts on him now? But yeah, my long rants on Hogan was done purely out of frustration. And I felt bad. I mean, this was before, the sex tape controversy came out. I was already pissed at him because he was on that reality show. He allowed it to destroy his family, a family that we thought and felt was pretty tight-knit. Linda and him were together for a long time. For many years, she was in the front row of so many shows. They always seemed to have a solid marriage, although I'm sure on the side, Hogan was doing a lot of blow and hooking up a lot of hookers, but so was Bret Hart and a lot of other people. But I thought that they had a relatively tight family. They seemed like they loved the kids, but that reality show ruined them. Brooke, grew up, a hot chick. So that was going to put a whole bunch of attention on her. The kid, Nick, got in the car accident and fucked his friend up real bad. And the marriage crumbled. They got really into that Hogan Knows Best show, and it just kind of consumed and ate away their lives and their family from the inside. And then Hogan, a guy who, like I've said before, I felt like after the Hall of Fame and Babe Ruth career that he had, he should be sitting on his ass enjoying the fruits of his labors. Wow. I look at the pathway I paved, and now I'm sitting here on a pile of money, and I'm going to be remembered as a legend until the end of time. Oh, that's not what he did. He decided to act like a 21-year-old, start dressing like a 21-year-old, acting like an idiot, embarrassing himself, getting caught in lies left and right, making a fool of himself. And it was annoying. And I think because I was a Hogan fan as a kid, even though he wasn't my favorite, I was a Hogan fan. I ain't gonna lie. I think the inner wrestling fan in me was disappointed. I'm like, motherfucker, you are harming the business by doing this. You had a chance to be remembered as, I know with the steroids that did enough to tarnish his reputation, but I even feel like he recovered from that. And had he not just completely imploded from the inside out, I think he could have still been, a statue type of guy. And somebody that we could have understood, okay, steroids were, that they were just part of the business back then. And there's plenty of other Hall of Famers that have done them. And he should be given a pass if Macho Man is and everybody else is. But it's everything that he did after that just got me so mad. So I kind of regret being that hard on him. And I tried to even kind of forgive him. Like, I can't deny who Hogan is. And then the shit dropped again. Then he's banging a DJ's wife and filming it. And then he's caught on that very same film, dropping the N-word. I'm like, it never stops with this guy. So I was like, I kind of wrote him off after that. I'm like, I'm done with you, Hulk. I'm sorry. I'm not going to go off and give you a Jim Cornette style rant like I would have 10 years ago, but I am done with you. But yeah, I remember those. Those were the days. There's Chris right there. Thank you, brother, for the $5. Here's to 10 years, man. When this quarantine ends, let's meet up in San Diego for a drink. I'm down with that. If anybody else lives in the San Diego area when we're finally allowed to go out into the world, let's go toast a few. I think we'll all be ready for that. Steve Myers, thank you for the $2. And thank you for the champagne. I thought about opening a bottle of the Jericho Bubbly, but I didn't want to drink that much. I certainly didn't want to drink the whole bottle and get fucked up in front of you guys. Plus, it's still early in the evening for me, and it's been a long week of editing and stuff, and I'd like to relax tonight. I ain't trying to get a huge buzz on. So y'all don't get me messed up. Like I said, I'm kidding. Jam3SJH3, thank you for the $4. No comment there, but I appreciate it. Mac Ram, thank you for the $10. No comment there either. All right. I think I'm done with super chats, at least for the moment. If anybody else rolls in with one, I'll backtrack and knock those out. We really have to get into wrestling news, but not before I shout out my homies on Patreon. If I can get my mouse to work. Doing the dual monitor thing hurts. Anyway, I would like to welcome back Alex Reynolds to the Patreon fold, Barry MK400, Blake Moran, Claudio Clavedetcher, Domanian Elwell Sr., Daniel Rodriguez, Devlin Husband, who I'm sure will pop in here if he's not here already, and maybe I missed him, Jimmy Anderson, Jordan Carr, John Riffle, Josiah Blevins, John Redifer, Keith Salyers, Kevin, Michael Cuomo, Michael Tong, Mr. Steve, Nathan Walker, Nick Musser, Reese Jones, Ryan Y, Scott Moss, Steve, and the Double Z TV. Thank you all very, very much. And speaking of Patreon, I got a video coming to you guys this week. The release date for that is going to be on Wednesday. It'll be early in the day. I'll probably premiere it, like Wednesday at like 10 a.m., kind of like I did at 10 a.m. with today's video. And that's going to be a review of the Monday Night Raw after Survivor Series 2001. This is a Patreon donation from Brandon. And this is going to be his video that he sponsored nearly a month ago, and I asked him if it was cool if I waited until after WrestleMania. That way I'm not uploading a Survivor Series video in the middle of WrestleMania, and I don't know why. It's just the OCD in me. So that'll be coming up on Wednesday. That's the video that you're going to get in between Monday and Saturday's podcasts. So keep a lookout for that. And that is it for the plugs. I think I'm done. With the plugs. We can finally start getting into wrestling news. We got a lot to talk about. Nope, I got to answer one more super chat first. Duelist Abe, thank you for the $9.99, brother. I appreciate it. $10 for 10 years. Congrats, good mic work. Been a fan since 2013. Cheers. I appreciate that. Yeah, 2013, WrestleMania 29, and oh man, Brock and Punk. What else happened that year? Brock won the WWE title. Kind of a big year. All right, so let's get into the wrestling news because we got a lot to get into. And we're going to start with WWE. Now, apparently, I'm guessing this is going to start this week on Monday, but apparently WWE is going to resume live TV tapings of not only Raw, SmackDown, and NXT. So that's kind of surprising, and I think, there's a lot of reports that came out on that today from Ryan Satin and from Fightful. And Fightful Select, by the way, go subscribe to them on Patreon. It's well worth your $5. You can really binge read a lot of news at once, and there's a lot of exclusives on there. And Select was reporting that a, quote, very aggressive Vince McMahon made the decision that their broadcasters pay for live content. And many on the talent roster were unhappy about it. I can imagine. Some at the WWE tapings were given a letter in case they were questioned by law enforcement, stating that they are essential media. So this stay-at-home order that exists in Florida, I'm assuming that there's ways around that based on what qualifies as essential business or essential media. I don't know how the hell WWE qualifies as essential media, but apparently Vince seems to think they do, and maybe their legal people seem to think they do, and they're able to pull this off. Now, I had also read a report about, some of the language that's in the contract of the USA and Fox deals is that, I think WWE contractually is only allowed 3 non-live shows per year on each network. But I would also assume that in that same language, there has to be something written in there for catastrophe or pandemic or, extenuating circumstances or something like that that will allow, maybe that rule to be bent. But if the deal is, you got to remember WWE, the stock has been plummeted, their motivations are different now. And if it's a matter of them losing a lot of money, which I believe it is, they probably stand to lose a lot of money if they do not produce live TV every week, then it sounds like they're going to do whatever they have to do to make that happen. And I think that sucks and is grossly irresponsible towards your workers there, even though they're taking all the precautions in the world. One staff member did test positive for coronavirus, by the way. We'll talk about that in a minute. WWE's taking all the necessary precautions, but really are they? What are the necessary precautions when you don't really know, aside from covering your fucking mouth and being screened and your temperature being taken? And if you feel symptomatic, then you get in a place and quarantine for 14 days. Aside from that, that's not foolproof. Eventually somebody's going to get this shit. And now WWE, it looks like they're going through with Money in the Bank as planned on May 10th, although that's going to be at the PC, obviously. So here's what you're going to do now. You're going to have another bunch of matches advertised for the pay-per-view, and a bunch of them are going to be changed last minute. You're going to have people getting sick. Somebody will get hurt. Somebody will back out. Some shit like that is going to happen. And I guess Money in the Bank they could tape. They actually could tape Money in the Bank ahead of time. But if they want to do Raw and SmackDown and NXT live, you're forcing the talent to be there every week and travel. And I don't know how they're getting there. You know, traveling on an airplane is not something I would want to do right now. And if I was working in WWE, I would say, get the fuck out of here. I'm not getting on an airplane. You know, I'll drive, but that could take days depending on where you live, especially if you live out in the West Coast or something. You know, I can't believe that they're making their talent do this. I understand that you got to go to work and you got to do stuff, but not at the risk of getting yourself sick, you know? So I don't blame any piece of talent that's unhappy. I don't blame any piece of talent that tells WWE to go fuck themselves. If I'm a wrestler and I had any sort of stroke at all, and I had any sort of value where I know they are never going to fire me, I would flat out not go. I was like, I'm not doing this. I would totally Rob Van Dam tribute to the troops that shit. Like, no, go F yourselves. You know, appreciate the troops and everything they've done for me, but I'm not fucking flying over there. And I have the right to say no, and I'm not doing it. So that's what I would say. I hope there are some talents that step forward. I don't really like this, although, you know, AEW is essentially doing the same thing, although they've mass taped a bunch of shows, so they're not working right now. But when their mass taping runs out, I'm curious how they're going to handle their situation. They might turn out to do the same thing WWE is doing. They're a brand new company. They can't afford to pause. That's another piece of my news here. There's already another company that's not very new that also ceased operations. Made me worried for AEW. But they're funded well, so they'll probably stick around provided this thing doesn't last for a year or anything. So anyway, WWE's going back. Apparently that'll start this Monday. We're going to have live TV shows, and I'm not quite sure about how I feel about that. And on top of that, there's a WWE staff member that was diagnosed or confirmed coronavirus case. They sent out a memo to their talent. It was a non-wrestler. It was a non-in-ring wrestler, but apparently this person contracted it while they were out to dinner with a healthcare worker, picked it up. They found out. They've quarantined that person ever since. They've told the talent about it, said the risk was minimal since this person was not in a wrestling capacity. They did not release the name of the person that contacted it or contracted it. And apparently for now, the risk is minimal and has pretty much been dealt with, but you're going to see shit like that happen more as these cases continue to rise. And we're seeing a little glimmer of hope, at least here in the United States. You know, some of the early estimates of the amount of deaths have now gone down dramatically, and we're seeing real, actual results from the world that we live in now, from our quarantine, from our self-isolation, from keeping a distance, the face masks, wiping shit off. All the things that we're doing cautiously day to day is now showing an effect in the numbers, and we're starting to see maybe the beginning of that curve. And maybe we're not going to be sitting here in our houses until September 1st. Maybe it'll be more like June 1st. Maybe it'll be like July 1st. Cautiously optimistic. You know, but that's cautiously optimistic. Who knows? There's just way too much unanswered questions right now. So I wouldn't want to be either company, but with WWE making this type of decision, you know, when you hear things like some of the talent is unhappy, all that's going to do is irate, make the fans irate, and they're going to come after WWE, and they deserve it. If I was working there, I'd feel very, very uncomfortable about this, and I mean, and I'm 90% against it, but there is that. I always try to, it's the theme of this channel. In 10 years, we always try to be rational, and no reason to be an asshole. Blah, WWE is stupid, blah. Let's at least take 10% of us and try to look at the reason why they're doing it. I can understand. People who own stocks in this company, and, for financial reasons, you got to make sure that you have no other options. If you got to cease operations and you have to put everything on pause, it has to be your very last option to where there's no other options left. And when you're a company and a corporation this big, that's going to be your thinking and your mentality, especially if they can justify it in their minds that they are taking care of the talent and they're following and doing the necessary precautions. Then they can say, oh, well, we should keep going or whatever. So that's the part of me that, I understand why they're doing it. And I know the fans, especially with the report that Vince McMahon was very aggressive about wanting to go live, he has no problem with being the bad guy. He'll be the guy, say, oh, I'm going to do this, so the fans can do everything they want, say, oh, you're greedy, and all that typical nonsense you hear from the fans constantly, and they're not wrong. But I don't know if it's necessarily a factor of Vince's individual greed than just the overall betterment of the company and the financial status of the company. It's not 1996 where Vince and Linda own it and run creative out of their fucking living room. This is a corporation now. This is a huge company with many employees and stockholders and so many different elements at play here that were 25 years ago. Compared to that 25 years ago. So you have to understand why, they need to do this in order to keep the company financially stable. So I get it, but on the surface, and the bare bones of it, Vince is demanding live shows every week. And from the wrestler's perspective, that sucks and feels extremely unfair. So that's kind of how I look at it both ways. But either company, WWE or AEW, taking any sort of unnecessary risks right now is probably not going to sit well with not only the wrestlers, but the fans. It's probably not a good idea. We'll see. We'll see how it goes this week. Before we get into my next bit of news, let me bust out a couple of more super chats that are rolling in. Mike Ost, thank you, man, for the $5. Internet's stone cold because he will tell you stone cold truth. First time super chatting. Thanks. Just want to say thank you for all you do. I appreciate it, man. Good to see you. Glad you're popping in for the first time. And I guess I do look like Stone Cold, except I'm way handsomer. But yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate it. Who we got next? Oh, another one from Mike Ost. Thank you for another $5. Do you ever think there will be a Live Aid Super Show in the future with all these wrestling organizations? I sure hope so. I would say no, but it sure would be cool, wouldn't it? I mean, WWE is as fucking petty as they are, and we're going to see the pandemic here from a financial standpoint force them to not be petty with the revival. We'll talk about that in just a second. I think it would be hard for WWE to give their rub to anybody because they're such stone cold assholes about themselves. So for them to do a show with AEW or anyone else, especially here in the States, they might be okay working Japan. But if they were to do just a US based promotion super show, it would benefit everybody else except WWE. And that's not really the way WWE operates. If it doesn't benefit them, they ain't interested. So I would say no on that one, but sure would be nice, for everybody to put their differences aside and, for the betterment of a good cause. I'd be into that for sure. Like I said a minute ago, the XFL, this is so sad. What luck this league has. The XFL has decided to cease all operations and they've laid off all staff. Now, it's worded as a shutdown, but there has been hints of possible resurrection if we come through this pandemic. If that happens, I don't think it's 100% that they're done forever and dead and buried. I think there's a chance that they can come back. I think they just don't know. I think it depends on what the future holds. And I was into it, man. It felt like the games were good. You guys were putting it over. The ratings were decent. The games were good. It felt like it was ran 100 times better. All those stupid, idiotic, brawl for all like mistakes, because some of them were that big that they made in the first rendition of the XFL seem to have been hammered out now. They're treating it as a real football league instead of a fucking joke, even though, the games weren't rigged or anything last time. It was just way too WWE-ish. This felt more serious, and it felt like they basically had their ducks in a row. So this is sad. I felt like the XFL might actually have a chance here. So I'm hoping that this is just a temporary thing because, if they lay off all their workers and they basically just start fresh in a couple of years, that will at least stop the hemorrhaging of money that I'm sure is happening when they have to cease operations but pay everybody. So they're shutting it down now for financial reasons, and hopefully they can bring it back. UFC has also suspended all of their shows as well because, which is not a surprise, Dana White, you guys hear that story of him trying to buy or secure a private island to run all UFC shows on. Everything's going to be there. Basically like his own performance center in the middle of the fucking ocean or something. It's such a Dana White thing to think is possible. And I'm like, surely that's not going to work. How is that going to work? You still have to travel there, and I just don't understand what he's thinking. Well, not surprisingly, they realize that as well. I think all of the current situation with the pandemic and all the restrictions, especially with the travel, have really handcuffed them there, and they've finally decided, like they should have all along, that maybe purchasing an island isn't going to work. So the UFC is also, at least for the time being, done. Let's hope that changes. One of the more interesting and pleasant news stories of the week, loved this one, was that this pandemic, I guarantee you, was the result of the Revival being released. WWE officially released the Revival, who've been wanting out for a long time. We know hopefully they're going to be AEW bound. I'm sure they'll take bookings everywhere. But WWE probably got rid of them for cost-cutting measures. The only reason these guys were not released or let go prior to this was because of the threat of going to AEW. But now when you're in a pandemic and you're already losing a lot of money as it is, it does not make much sense to keep guys on the payroll out of spite. So I'm glad that the WWE came to their senses and cut these boys loose. And now they can do their thing. And another thing, it might not be all just cost cutting. it might be WWE's way of saying, all right, let's cut them loose now while there's no fans. Because AEW probably won't wait very long to... Now, how does it work if you're released? Do you get a no-compete? I think you do. So AEW is probably going to bring them in right away, but WWE might feel like, oh, they can debut in an empty arena. It'll diminish their debut instead of coming out in front of a hot crowd who's cheering and just completely whack off to the idea of WWE guys, especially disgruntled WWE guys, turning up in AEW. And I'm not going to lie, we're going to talk about it later on when we discuss Dynamite. I'm not going to lie, it got better this week, but up until now, I'm not a huge fan of the Exalted One. I think that's almost... it's almost illegal to say that because Brody Lee is awesome, and I'm going to give Brody Lee a chance. It's only like 3 weeks in. So far, I haven't been that enamored with the character, and I've been worried that, was Vince right all along about this guy? I don't know, but I think that's a little harsh when you're 3 weeks into the gimmick. So if anybody's saying, oh, see, I told you Brody sucked, you're 3 weeks in. The ringmaster sucked when he got there. So it just takes time. So I'm going to give it some more time. Right now, I'm not liking it very much, but I'm hoping in the end, it'll turn out to be a huge deal. And maybe WWE realize that the Brody Lee thing is not that over. And like, well, if the revival's only going to go to AEW to do that and take little cheap shots at us, just fucking let them do it. What are we worried about? Which is the way they should have been all along. So Scott Dawson and Dash Wilder have now changed their names officially. We know the names of the revival going forward. It's going to be Dax Hardwood. Scott Dawson is now Dax Hardwood. His real name is David Hardwood. And Dash Wilder's real new name is Dash Wielder. So we went from Scott Dawson to Dax Hardwood and Dash Wilder to Dash Wheeler. And Dash Wheeler's real name is Daniel Wheeler. So they're able to keep their real last names here, which is great. This is probably something that they can take with them from now on. And, them showing up in AEW, I think, is almost a given. Imagine that tag team division is going to be awesome with those teams there. Be really cool. I mean, Jim Cornette is such an anti-AEW guy, and he's just such a psychotically crazy, racist, homophobic, womanizing madman. It really disappoints me about him. But if he could put all that shit aside and his pure, unadulterated hatred for AEW, if he could put that aside and show up with those two guys, as top guys are beating the shit out of almost like an NWO or something, that would be great heat. It'll be like when Cornette invaded ECW or Jerry Lawler invaded ECW. It was kind of like the same thing. So we'll see if that ever happens in the future, but probably not. I think Jim Cornette should just stick to insane podcasting. That's what he does best. Before I get into Ronda Rousey, let me bust out a bunch of super chats. Okay, Fabe, good to see you, man. I'm going to nail you in just a second. Poor choice of words. I'm going to get to you in just a second. Jordan Smith, thank you for the $5. Congrats on 10 years. How are people acting in your neighborhood towards the virus situation? Thankful this didn't happen in the 80s. Read board games. Yeah, we've been bored out of our asses, too. Yeah, I've said the same thing. Imagine if this was 1978. We'd have 6 channels to watch and a whole lot of books to read and maybe some chutes and ladders. And other than that, not a whole lot. So at least we have the internet. People in my neighborhood, I live in kind of a nicer area of San Diego, and the people around here are pretty damn cautious. They're on the drive-thrus, they're attaching like the credit card thing to a stick and sticking it in your car, and you put your credit card in there. Everybody's wearing masks. I actually got my face masks delivered today on my front door, and it's kind of surreal that that's kind of like the way it is now. I even put it on. I'm like, I fucking hate this thing, but I think next time I go to the store, I need to be rocking that. It's just for safety, and plus, potentially spreading it to other people. It's just the responsible thing to do. I just can't believe that's reality. So most people that I've been seeing, unless they're out running, most people are out running, aren't wearing a mask, but most people in cars and walking around the streets and definitely working in all the businesses that are allowed to be open are all wearing masks. So, people are being pretty cautious in my area. I feel pretty confident. I feel like I've stayed mostly clean, although I've been grabbing some takeout food, and I've made maybe 3 or 4 grocery store trips since this started. For the most part, I'm staying put in my house and not interacting with very many people. I can't wait till it's over, though, DM23, man, good to see you. Thank you for the $10. I was 19 going on 20 when I saw your very first video. Wow, fast. Jeez, you're almost 30 now. Fast forward to a decade, I'm 29 going on 30. I feel like I've grown up with you. With that being said, congrats and cheers to a decade of good mic work. Man, that's what I like to hear, because I know a lot of people, and cheers, by the way, I got to take a drink, of course. But I know a lot of people who might have started watching me. I know somebody watched me at like age 15, and they're like 25 now. They went from being in 10th grade to being out of college. It's a long time. So I'm glad that, and we've all got, you guys aren't the only one growing up. I'm growing up. I'm not the same person I was 10 years ago when I started this YouTube. So, we all mature and learn from, our previous ways and stuff, and hopefully turn out better people. So I'm glad that you were able to grow up with me. Felt like I grew up with you, DM. There's OK Fabe there. You guys right now, stop what you're doing. Go over and subscribe to OK Fabe's YouTube channel. He does great work over there. Thank you very much, brother, for the $20. You definitely did not have to do that. Got to send some love for your anniversary. Keep up the great work, Greg. I appreciate it. And OK Fabe has a great podcast over on his channel and is probably even a little bit more up to date on the current product than I am. And he's a good guy to watch, especially if you want to hear like weekly stuff. Go check out OK Fabe, give him a sub, and go give him a follow over on Twitter. Hey, by the way, follow me on Twitter too. I'm fun over there. You guys will love it. Good to see you, Connor. Appreciate it. Stone Cold 10X, thank you, brother, for the $5. Good to see you in here again. This XFL worked because, I thought you were going to say the XFL has worked. I'm like, no, it didn't. This XFL worked because Vince had football people help with it. Happy 10. Exactly. Vince, I think last time there was too much WWE. The Rock was on TV. Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler are calling football games. Jesse the Body Ventura was calling games, I think. Vince McMahon had the welcome to the XFL intro. Cheerleaders or strippers posing as cheerleaders in the locker room, goofy shit going on. This time they treated it as an athletic league, like a sports league, which they definitely did not do before. And it was just it felt like they were cutting promos. We're going to be what the NFL is not and all this crap. And they let the players put whatever the fuck they wanted on the back of the jerseys. It was just didn't work. This time I felt like they were really doing it right. And it's a shame. It's a shame. All right, caught up the super chats. Thanks again to OK Fabe and DM and all you guys for what you do. We got to talk about Ronda Rousey. Let me take another sip of this refreshing cold Stella. Ronda Rousey was a guest on Steve-O's Wild Ride podcast. Now, I actually watch a little bit of Steve-O on YouTube. I think he's great. He just has a really good YouTube channel, and I always liked the Jackass guys. Because back in the day, Jackass, I remember when it started on MTV, it would come on like right before Sunday Night Heat. Because Sunday Night Heat used to be on MTV, I think around the same time. And I remember like watching Jackass right before pay-per-views. And then the Sunday Night Heat would play and then the pay-per-view would play. And the show just cracked me the fuck up. And then I watched the movies and, seeing how all of them kind of grew up and matured. And then the tragedy of like Ryan Dunn and how fucked up Steve-O was and all the drugs he was on. And to see him be a complete maniac in the first movie, be damn near rock bottom OD death in the second movie, to be completely rehabilitated in the third. And now he's on YouTube with his life together, completely stone sober. He's ambitious. He does a whole lot of things and he's just keeps himself busy. And he's never looked back. He's very much like the Jake the Snake Roberts or the Scott Hall story, even more so. I think he's even more than them because I think they might have lapsed a couple of times. He's been stone cold straight ever since. And it's cool to kind of watch him do his thing. He's a very entertaining dude and a real smart dude. So Ronda Rousey was a guest on his podcast. He even has like a van where he like lives out of and he does podcasts in. That's where he was broadcasting this from. And she was from her house. So she's a guest on there. I have not listened to the whole podcast. I only wrote down parts of the transcript that was interesting. And I think I went and watched one clip, but I haven't had a chance to listen to the entire, I think it's an hour and a half. But she said a couple of things about the wrestling fans. Now, she went on to say that she loved the professional wrestling business. She loved the women that she worked with, and she appreciated everybody. But also, you could tell she's kind of working because she made a point to slip in there that, hey, if I can go out there and have fake fights with people and get paid, what's not to love, right? So there she goes, slipping that little fake fights thing in there, kind of like when she turned heel last year and said, it's all fake, right? And that sort of thing. So she kind of slips that in there, even though while passive aggressively putting over the women and putting over the industry. But she then started talking about like the grueling schedule, talked about how she'd just be on the road 200 days a year. She didn't have time to lay down or rest. It was constantly go, go, go. And she wasn't having a lot of time for her family. And she said, we don't need the money. Clearly, Ronda Rousey does not need to be working in the WWE. And they don't need the money. So what the hell are you doing if you're just spending all your time away from your family when you don't need to? And she kind of said that played a big role into her kind of not coming back into the WWE yet. And also cited the fans as another big reason. Called them ungrateful and basically just said, fuck these fans, dude, which I can understand. I think fuck these fans, dude, is something that I've said to myself 38 times a day ever since 2010 when I started doing these commentaries, because there are a lot of really asshole-ish people out there. Now, I don't know if Antoine is in here. We were talking on Twitter today, and he kind of took issue with it because he felt that she was basically punishing all fans for the actions of a few. Yes, she was, but I think that's part of the work. The fact that she was, because you got to know somebody like Ronda Rousey, any smart person with half of a working, functioning brain and no biases is not going to shit on Ronda Rousey as a wrestler. Think about some of the women we see on the roster and how many of those Ronda Rousey is better than. Coming in from the UFC and transitioning really well. I've compared her to Kurt Angle. She wasn't as good as Kurt Angle transitioning from amateur wrestling into WWE because nobody's been better than that. But she's close, and she's the female version of that, and I thought she made a really seamless transition. Her first match is arguably the best match on that particular WrestleMania. And she fought hard in her fights. Every time she was in the ring, she looked like she'd been in a fight. She even allowed Nikki Bella to give her a run for her money. Remember, she looked like she'd been in a war when she beat Nikki. She had that year-long dominant run, and it didn't give you that feeling of, oh, WWE's just pushing her because of her name. No, she's really good. Yes, her name has a lot to do with it, but the fact that she doesn't suck, because WWE's the type of people that, like Goldberg, for example, who can't work for worth a shit in the ring, but he's a name, so they slap the belt on him anyway. I think a lot of us would be okay with a 50-year-old Goldberg being champ if he could work, but he can't. Ronda can. So it made the whole thing easier, I think. And for me, I appreciated Ronda Rousey. I'm like, girl, good job coming in from real fighting to fake fighting and be able to do it as good as you do. For any fan to disrespect you, they got to be a moron because she's great and I miss her and the roster misses her. So I understand that fans have no concept of that. And these lazy fat assholes are going to be sitting at home passing judgment on her. You suck, Ronda. I was in the audience. Survivor Series 2018 in Charlotte. Catherine, if you're here, back me up on this. I'm sitting there, and Charlotte, who even at that time was very hated, she has blonde hair and blue eyes, and she's Ric Flair's daughter, so of course WWE just pushes her to the moon, right? That was the opinion still even back then. And then all of a sudden, in that match, when Charlotte kind of turns and whacks Ronda Rousey with the kendo stick, babyface Ronda Rousey, and just wears her the fuck out with that thing, the crowd is going nuts. All of a sudden, Charlotte is Stone Cold Steve Austin with that level pop. The fans are booing and shitting on Ronda Rousey. I'm like, what is the matter with you guys? 24 hours ago, Charlotte was public enemy number one. Now, all of a sudden, it wasn't like a double turn. That wasn't even the point. The fans just decided we're going to shit on Ronda now. So when she says things like they're ungrateful, I can totally understand. I've seen it with my own eyes. And I kind of, even though I think she's working us, she's 1 bajillion% right. If I'm Ronda Rousey and I got a ton of money, and when I do come into wrestling, I got to deal with a barrage of assholes, that don't deserve to breathe the same air as me, telling me that I suck, I wouldn't come back either. So I kind of understand. But a lot of fans took issue with it and got mad at her, maybe not realizing that she's working. And even if she wasn't working, why would that even make you mad? Are you not fucking surprised? My favorite thing about the fans, not you guys are awesome. My favorite thing about the fans is they will act like complete dicks to wrestlers. Even YouTubers who scream and yell and freak out, act like assholes to wrestlers. And then when those wrestlers act like an asshole back to respond, the assholes get mad that the wrestler acted like an asshole and then call that wrestler an asshole. I'm allowed to be an asshole, but you're not, basically, is the attitude there. And so for Ronda Rousey to call them out, I don't blame her. Now, what tells me she's working here is because for every one of those assholes that exist, there's people like me who appreciate Ronda Rousey and respect Ronda Rousey and thought that she did a good job when she was in WWE. And I think for every hater, you got 10 people that like her. So she's not hearing all bad shit here. So she's probably using this as a way to work us for whenever she does come back. I think she's got to come back, doesn't she? And she should come back as a heel because Ronda Rousey was she was easily hateable in UFC. Even though she was a pioneer and a trailblazer, she was cocky. She had an attitude. She was a bitch during the weigh-ins to every opponent she ever wrestled. And she's probably arguably better at being that than a babyface. Her first year, or almost her first full year prior to her heel turn, she was just way too... Remember how I used to complain about that? Remember when she debuted? I said, what is with the smiling? It's way too much smiling. It was my number one complaint of Ronda Rousey for nearly 365 days until the very end there when she got serious. And I feel like if she does come back, a heel is much better for her because she was a heel in the UFC. And Nia Jax apparently took issue with what Ronda Rousey said. She tweeted that she would, if WWE ever puts her in the ring again to make Ronda look good, Nia, she doesn't need your help to look good. that Nia Jax would risk her own job just to be the first woman to knock that bitch out. That's what Ronda Rousey says. I'd like to see you try, Nia Jax. Why don't you go ask Braun Strowman how that worked out for him when he got a little bit aggressive at the Royal Rumble with another UFC fighter. How did that end for him? He ate a fist. He had a fistful of Brock. So I think if Nia Jax tried to try Ronda Rousey, she'd put Nia down regardless of the size difference. Braun's bigger than Brock, and Brock fucked him up, or would have. So yeah, Nia, I'd be quiet because that's something that you're not going to do. But it might be a fun match when they do finally, do something with Ronda again. I mean, and that's just, that's just my opinion, just based on what Ronda said. How can she not be working? How can she not be working us? Some of the big media outlets are, reporting it too. ESPN had a big article about how she said this shit, but I still think she's got to be working us, because if you're going to come back and you're going to be a heel, get the fans pissed at you. That's a good way to do it, right? Insult the fans or criticize, not even insult the fans, just criticize them. We'll talk about Edge here in a minute too, because, criticizing is different than insulting. And I think what Edge did is he didn't criticize the critics, he criticized the assholes. And I think that's kind of what Ronda Rousey did here too. So we'll see what the future holds for Ronda up in the future. Let me bust out some more super chats before I get into Edge, because we got to talk about Edge too. Let me see. DM23, thank you for $5 more. I will make sure I drink to that emoji. You guys are going to make me get up here in a minute and get another beer. I plan and hope to properly have a beer with you at Mania next year. Yeah, once this virus passes and we start actually planning Mania, we'll start working on the meetup. I plan on doing some things Mania week and being up there and having a good time. So we will definitely plan a meetup. My last 2 meetups in LA have come right across the street from the Staples Center at the Smash Burger. But with this being at the stadium, we'll have to see where we wind up. Probably still somewhere around Staples. Don't know yet. But we'll be doing some sort of a meetup, meet and greet, something like that for Mania weekend. Faux show. Stone Cold, thank you for another. Oh, yeah, shit. So, DM, I missed that one earlier. Stone Cold, I got yours. There we go. Mike Oust and Adrian. There we go. There's one that I missed. Oh, there's a few more that I missed. Sorry, guys. I'm scrolling back up. All right, Big Mike's Wrestling Recap Show. Thank you, man, for the $15. That is very generous of you. Greg, congrats on 10 years. Here's to 10 more. I've only been watching you for 3 years, but can't wait to see what the next 10 looks like for you on YouTube. Cheers. Thank you very much, Big Mike. I appreciate it, and I'll be sure to drink there. With a name like that, that makes me think that you have a show or a YouTube channel. If you do, you guys go over to Big Mike's channel. Subscribe right now. Tell him Greg sent you. Which he knows. Joshua Aparicio, thank you for covering my WWE Network expenses this month. I appreciate it, man. Thank you for 10 years. First time I heard you was your review of the WWE Network, and I was a senior in high school. Holy crap. Now I'm 2 years after college, and you have been awesome. Here for more yours. Thank you for more years. Thank you, man. Very much. Appreciate that. Yeah, I remember that when the network first came out. I always meant to do a revised version of the network review. And now I feel like the network is obsolete. Now it's like it was the biggest thing going, and now it's kind of not the same, even though there's still some really good network shows on there. I did see the Edge 24 doc. Man, fucking great. All right, there's Adrian right there. Thank you, brother, for the $10. Greeting from Ireland. All right. Awesome. Great to see you. Keep up the good work. I hope everything's going okay for you guys up there and how you're handling the crisis and the pandemic. And best wishes, man, to Ireland. Thanks for stopping in tonight. Another one from Mike Ost. Appreciate the $10. Last super chat for stream today. Ronda was at WWE headquarters before the pandemic. Yeah, that's right. She was. McMahon already exposed business in 80s to avoid taxes. This is an angle. It's got to be. She's been hanging around them. She wouldn't go out of her way to say this now. She could have said this when she first left. Now, fuck those fans. So to bring it up now, she's working. 100% she's working. And I like it. And I like that people are mad at her. I like that people don't get it. And that's the beauty of it. I even said today on Twitter, I'm like, the wrestling fans' reaction to her saying that is my spirit animal. Because I'm like, dudes, open your eyes, man. Miguel Zarilla, thank you, man, for the $5. I appreciate it. Hey, GoodMicWork, I've been a fan since 2011. Holy crap. Your videos defending John Cena made me feel better when my friends would come over and hate on him. Thank you. Oh, yeah. My good old John Cena defending, and I don't regret a word of what I said. I stood by every single syllable of it, and I think I'm being proven right. Now, and as we come to the end in the twilight of John Cena, it's been many years now since he's been shoved up our asses and in our faces. And I've been saying there will come a time those fans that so idiotically shit on his face and thought he was the worst thing ever, actually used words like cancer to describe him, are going to grow up and stop being morons and realize that the guy deserves your respect. And I know I'm going to be proved right on that one day. You wait till his Hall of Fame speech. I bet you it'll be one of the best ones we ever have. All right, so now since we got Ronda Rousey out of the way, we got to talk about Edge. Now, a lot of fans were critical of the Randy Orton and Edge match at WrestleMania. A lot of fans felt like it went too long, which I agree. But there also was a portion of the fans who were really shitting on it, which kind of blew my mind. I saw just all capital letters, this match sucked, and like, why are we yelling? Is there a reason to yell? Here's my opinion on it, and here's the opinion I feel like everybody should be. I appreciate both guys busting their ass and killing themselves out there for us. I thought it was very dramatic at times. I thought Edge did a great job of telling the story with his actions and especially with his face. The guy's the best actor in the company, easily. But with all that being said, it was a little long for my taste. And I think if they shaved 15 minutes off of this, it would have been better. Or if they maybe would have edited it. But then you run the risk of it looking like all of the other weird matches that we saw throughout the week. So all the matches, the Gargano and Ciampa won, the Wyatt and John Cena won, and the Boneyard match, I think this was the worst. I'll agree with that, of the four. But I certainly didn't hate it. I certainly didn't think it was a terrible match. I certainly didn't think it sucked. And there was a lot about the match that I was impressed with. I just think that maybe it went a little bit long. And of all those type of matches that they had, maybe this one ranks at the bottom of the list. But Edge is the man. You know, Edge is coming back, working so hard to make this comeback, and he busts his ass. He works his balls off in this match. It's not like these guys didn't take any bumps. Edge hasn't even, hardly taken any bumps aside from training in 9 years, and he's out there having a match like this, diving off of shit, using all sorts of weapons, being very, very intense, and doing this in front of no audience where it's already where your adrenaline maybe is flowing a little bit less as it is, and you're going to be flying through tables and ladders and shit. So I appreciated the work. I thought both Edge and Orton, especially Edge, really busted their asses. And if it was up to me, I would have just made the match a little bit shorter. But I certainly didn't think the match sucked and was stupid and was pointless to do. Anybody thinking that is just an asshole. No other way to describe him. Asshole. That's it. Just an asshole. Because, to be that much of a dick, to be a fat moron, criticizing these guys for killing themselves out there, I find to be disrespectful. And I think that's who Edge was targeting. He wasn't targeting reasonable people like us. He was targeting the dickheads. And somebody like me, Edge, those comments that Edge made about the fans that will always want to complain, I believe he made those comments on Corey Graves' podcast, right? That the fans will always find a reason to complain. Fans got mad at that. And that went back to what I was saying earlier on. It blows my mind how you can have assholes act this way towards wrestlers, and then when the wrestlers are an asshole back and they respond by being an asshole, then the fans call them out for being an asshole. What kind of fucking logic is that? That's kind of the problem and the trouble that Seth Rollins found him in. Although he's a lot less likable than Edge, it kind of started the same way. All Seth did was just snap at finally hearing comment after comment after comment from the world's biggest dickheads on a repeated basis on social media, and he finally barked back, and he was a dick. And he said some things that he probably shouldn't have, and even apologized for it. But all he was doing was basically taking the same road that the people that are criticizing him is. So he's kind of acting like a dick back. And a lot of what Edge said, he didn't come off that dickish, but you could tell he was touchy about his first match back, and I don't blame him. If this was my first match back after 9 years, and I've had this story, we all watched that 2024 doc on him, this whole long story, of him and Beth both losing their parents, and then him getting doctors' advice and finding more about his neck and realizing that maybe wrestling again is a possibility, and the long journey to train and get back into ring shape and have the very successful comeback, the emotional comeback at the Royal Rumble. And now you set up and you train so hard and work so hard and you deliver this match and you damn near kill yourself in the process. And then you're going to have fans that say it was sucked and it was a waste of time. I don't blame him for being a little bit irritated by that. So I think that if fans were upset about the length of the match, no problem. I am even willing to say that that was the worst match of the four, off-site matches that they did. It was the worst of the four, and it should have been shorter. But as far as it sucking, as far as it being the worst match ever, anybody that's saying that is just a giant penis. That's all I got to say about that. And I think that's where Edge's comments came from. I think he was directing it more at those people because has Edge ever came off to you as an irrational guy? Not to me. No interview that I've ever seen Edge in has he ever said something that I said to myself, you know what? That is a really stupid comment. Never. That's Hulk Hogan's job, to say ridiculous shit in interviews. It's not really Edge's job. So Edge, more often than not, has been a rational person and an honest person. And this is to attack him now over these comments. I can see why he made them, basically, is what I'm saying. So with Edge and Ronda Rousey, even with Edge, he wasn't working. Ronda, she was. I kind of got both her backs on this one. Sorry to say. Hopefully that doesn't upset anybody. We'll go back out here, answer a couple of super chats. I'll knock those out in one more second because I just want to knock out these last two pieces of news, and then we'll get into AEW and NXT for the week because we had some interesting shit there. And last night's SmackDown was interesting as well, and I definitely have some opinions on this Braun Strowman and Bray Wyatt stuff, so stay tuned. Last couple of things on my notes here. WWE Cruiserweight Champion Jordan Devlin has been stripped of the title. He is stuck in the UK and can't get back here because of travel restrictions. So they're holding a tournament, and it's kind of a breakaway from what they normally do. This isn't just your like tournament. This is like 8-man tournament. They're doing almost like a G1 Climax style tournament. They're gonna have groups, and then the winner with the best guys with the best record in the groups will advance and face each other and all that kind of shit. So it's a more complex style of tournament, which is awesome. But I'm surprised they're going this in depth with it just to crown a champion from a guy that was stripped. If this was a brand new title and they were introducing it, I can see a tournament like this. But for this, what this tells me is this is just time-killing matches. This is treading water matches. This gives them a tournament. They can have a whole lot of different matches in it, and you can get like triple the amount of matches that you would normally get in a regular tournament, and you can stretch out TV. So, and if this, 205 Live and that shit will now be able to have matches on there in NXT, I would assume. So I'm guessing that that's kind of why they chose to do a tournament this big, is so they could, just stretch out TV matches. And the final piece of news that I do want to mention was the very first, I believe, super chat that I got of the night, the gentleman asking me about the Brawl for All, Dark Side of the Ring. I did see that on Tuesday. Very good. Most of it, I'd say 90% of it was information that I already knew, and most of us already knew. But there were some interesting tidbits in there. Probably the biggest that I wasn't aware of is that Vince Russo admittedly said that he wanted to create the Brawl for All to get back and to stick it to JBL, to stick it to Bradshaw, which at that time, we've all heard stories, was a big, giant, walking asshole backstage. A bully, a dickhead, a jerk-off, treated everybody like crap. Everybody couldn't stand him, and he just walked around like a tough guy and just bullied assholes. And Russo was sick of it, so he was tired of listening to JBL brag about how tough he was, so he's like, let's create a shoot tournament so somebody can knock this motherfucker out. And he didn't deny it. Jim Cornette was also interviewed, and it's so funny that they got Russo and Cornette both on the same show. I mean, obviously not interviewed in the same place, but Cornette, even on this show, where it's a lot more tame than some of the language that he uses on his podcast, does not mix words about Vince Russo. He hates him every bit on Vice TV that he does on the internet and talked about what a stupid, idiotic decision it was. They went into great detail about the Steve Williams situation. They interviewed Bart Gunn for this, and his story is kind of sad, how this whole thing, you should have launched him and it wound up ruining him. And it was kind of interesting because there were a couple of questions in my mind that I had about it. They also interviewed Droz, and also shout out to Droz for his just unimaginable positivity. This guy's now been in a wheelchair for 21 years this October. I remember when that happened, and he still just holds no grudges. He just seems to keep a positive attitude, and I just cannot believe what a guy he is. What a fucking guy. So he's interviewed for this thing as well. He did talk about his injury and how it happened. D'Lo was interviewed as well. And you think about everybody that was in that and what it was designed to do, and Doc had just come in. They just signed Dr. Death, and they thought, a program with Austin should be good. He's the toughest motherfucker in wrestling. We put him in this Brawl for All. Surely he'll win it, right? Well, he got knocked out very early. He got knocked out by Bart Gunn. The big surprise. Oh, crap, that wasn't supposed to happen. Now what do we do? And, of course, Bart Gunn would go on to win the tournament. I think he beat Bradshaw and maybe Godfather in the last two matches. Bradshaw in the finals. So I remember thinking that at the time anyway, that because I remember when Dr. Death got knocked out, and all the way back in 98, I was thinking that after Dr. Death got knocked out, that they worked the last two fights. I felt like after that, and this is my wrestling mind thinking here, and it was discredited in the documentary. I thought for sure that because Bart Gunn knocked out Steve Williams, WWE's like, well, shit, now Bart's got to be our guy. He wasn't who we wanted, but if he knocks out Dr. Death and now somebody else knocks out him, it's like, we got a chance to make Bart now because he knocked out the toughest guy in there. So I kind of thought they booked Bart to win. I thought they told the guys go out there and really hit each other, try to make it look as real as possible. Godfather, you take a dive. Because Charles was right. He was interviewed for this too. He's a tough bastard. I wouldn't want to fight him. And Bart knocked him out, and Godfather didn't let on to the work. He's like, no, he legitimately knocked me out. He caught me with one, and down I went. And then he beat Bradshaw in the finals. And Bart Gunn, it was almost like the opposite. Here I'm thinking that, they probably want to protect Bart since he knocked out Steve Williams, make sure he doesn't get knocked out. It was actually the opposite. Got him heat. Got him heat with Jim Ross. Got him heat with WWE management because he fucked up their plans. The Brawl for All fucked up everybody's career, including the winner. And you felt bad for Bart when he was telling the story of, excuse me, when he was telling the story of, after I won, I kind of just sat at home. They didn't have anything for me. They never called me. And then finally, the next year, they booked me in a match with Butterbean. And even Butterbean alludes to the fact that Vince McMahon put Bart in the ring with him as a punishment. I was there at WrestleMania 15 in Philly. I watched that match live. Bart Gunn and Butterbean. And Bart Gunn's not a fighter, even though he was trained to box. Butterbean trained to do this, and WWE and a lot of people, I think, internally knew that Bart was fucked. And they had Vinny Pazienza, I think, is the referee. I think prior to this match as well was like the last appearance of Gorilla Monsoon. I'm actually kind of proud that I saw his final TV appearance in person. But the match was like 5 seconds. As soon as it started, Bart got knocked down with one punch. He got back up, and Butterbean tells a story. He goes, I knew I was just going to go over and tag him. It was just going to be one punch, and he was out. And his whole head turned around, spun around the other way when Butterbean knocked him out. And the word is that Vince was just so mad that he purposely put Bart in that situation to get humiliated, which I don't know why you would want to do that. Having a wrestler look so weak and pathetic next to not even a real credible boxer, more of like an entertainment boxer. Butterbean did all these crazy, kind of MMA fights and stuff. He wasn't fighting Tyson or Holyfield or anything. So it just made not only Bart look bad, but I thought it made wrestling look bad. Because when you put a wrestler in a real fight, what happens? They get knocked out in 5 seconds. So for Vince to do that to wrestling simply to settle a grudge with Bart Gunn, I feel is stupid. And it's not something I think Vince would even care enough to do, but apparently he did. So it was an interesting documentary, that's just to say the least. And an interesting one that they picked. I'm surprised that they decided to do an entire episode on this, especially with some of the gnarly episodes they've done, like Gino Hernandez and the Von Erichs and New Jack and Benoit. We've got Owen Hart coming up. A lot of their stuff has been real serious, and this was serious too. You really felt for Bart, but it almost highlighted the absurdity of it. The Brawl for All was the worst idea in wrestling, but I wouldn't call it a tragedy. It was just a really stupid idea that fucked a lot of shit up, cost the company a lot of money, cost guys their careers. Bart and Steve Williams, the two guys that should have been coming out of that thing on top, were worse off for it. I think Steve Williams held a grudge because if you remember, Dr. Death showed up in WCW alongside Ed Ferrara when he was doing that Jim Ross thing. I couldn't believe that. They were homies. They were friends, and I think they made up because Dr. Death passed away shortly after that. And I think Jim Ross and Dr. Death made peace. But I couldn't believe that Dr. Death did that. I don't know if it was a matter of him signing with WCW and they forced him to, or if he was really, had some resentment towards Jim Ross for how his WWE stay went. And I couldn't believe he sat alongside Ed Ferrara when that was happening. That was so disgusting to me. But Jim Ross, if he never holds a grudge, why am I gonna? But aside from that, aside from kind of the strange circumstances of Steve Williams, him passing away a couple of years later, and the sad story of what happened to Bart, at least nobody died, as a direct result, I should say, of the Brawl for All. But yeah, very good episode. Very good episode indeed. All right, let's jump into Dynamite and NXT. Let me go up here and make sure I got nothing else to... Oh, yeah, I got a few to answer. And then we're going to get into Dynamite first, then follow up with NXT. Then we'll say one thing about this past week's Raw, and then we'll talk about SmackDown. And after that, I'll answer some questions. If you guys want to fire away with them in the chat here, I also put on Twitter for you guys to ask me questions over there. I'm not sure if anybody asked any on Patreon or not, but I'll check. And we'll hang out and answer some questions. I'll definitely have to open up another cold one. Adrian, thank you, man, for the $5. Appreciate it. Edge Orton was a good match, not great, too long and very slow pace. Yeah, I'll agree with that. It was slow pace too, but I almost think that was like by design, but it just didn't come off well on TV. Still props though for Edge, considering he was 9 years out of the ring. Yeah, I think that's maybe what not only rubbed him the wrong way, but me too, is because I just thought, can the fans just refrain from being a dick for 5 seconds? Like, does everything have what in the world gives you the absolute perfection that you so demand. You know, what in this world, what form of entertainment or person or human being or anything in this world that you live in gives you that perfection that you demand, you know? And I think, like, for the fans to put that so much in front and put Edge's hard work in the back, I think is disrespectful and an asshole-ish thing to do and an immature thing to say. You know, have the critiques about the match. Fine, no problem. But to say it sucked and it was a waste of fucking time, no, it wasn't. Ask Edge's body if it was a waste of time. I bet you the answer is no. He was probably pretty banged up after that. Chris Leon, thank you, man, for the $2. Could we see an Edge and Styles feud at SummerSlam? I'd be into that. Looks like AJ Styles is going to be coming back as a zombie since he was rising from the grave. I think AJ was one of the names that Edge mentioned in his return promo on Raw, wasn't it? Talked about all the guys he can work with, and currently is on Raw, so that kind of limits him, and AJ is there. He'd be a perfect next opponent for Edge. Another guy I could see Edge working with is Seth Rollins, for sure, but I really want to get fans back in these arenas, man, because as we're going to talk about here in a minute, especially with WWE shows, the fans are missed dramatically, my God. So I hope that doesn't sound like it's going to be the case because WWE is going to continue taping, but I hope that this shit ends soon so we can get Edge back in feuds in front of an audience, and an Edge and Styles feud or Edge and Seth feud will be amazing. I'd be into that. All right, was that it? Another one from Adrian. Dr. Death, thank you, man, for another generous super chat. Dr. Death was past it when he came to WWE. Oh, for sure. I remember Dr. Death from the mid-'80s. Trust me, you ain't got to tell me. He was pushed that way because he was JR's boy. Well, not sort of, but you got to understand the talent roster was not that strong in 98. Even though Dr. Death was past his prime, he was still more than capable of performing on that roster. That was not a strong roster. New Midnight Express, Oddities, Truth Commission, and, you know, shit like that. It wasn't like they had the talent like they have now, where maybe Doc wouldn't be as valuable. But a good old country Texas ass kicker would be a great guy to put against Steve Austin, because at that time, Austin had suffered the pile driver and his ring style changed. He became more of a ground-based, mat-based brawler rather than, you know, kind of diving off the ropes and taking, you know, a little bit more serious bumps than he used to. So just two badasses punching each other. Dr. Death was more than capable physically of doing that. Had he come in maybe 3 years later at the same age, then no way. I think he would have been lost because that time you had the Radicals there and all those guys. But in 98, you got to remember Brett and Shawn had just left. You know, there's a lot of, they were only 2 years removed from Hall and Nash leaving. They, you know, guys like Edge and Christian weren't even on the map yet. So it was, or not really on the map. So I think there was room for him. I think there, and think about who Austin was feuding with. Foley. They dug up Foley after the previous year. You know, was not really doing a whole lot. And then he was a joker. He was a babyface dude love in 97. And then 98, during the confrontation on Raw with Vince, when Austin had the hand tied behind his back, he comes out to be revealed as Austin's opponent for the next two pay-per-views. Because Undertaker and Kane were kind of doing their thing. So those are probably the two biggest contenders. Austin work with Kane at King of the Ring. But aside from Undertaker and Kane, who was really on the roster to credibly challenge him for the title? Not very many. Even Triple H wasn't there yet. Yeah, he had taken over for DX, but prior to that, he wasn't ready for main event, in my opinion. And he wasn't at that point either. So they basically were like, well, Foley makes the most sense. So on the roster, I think there was more than enough room for Dr. Death at that time, in 98, for sure. But maybe a couple years later, not so much. Let's get into AEW. Let's talk about AEW first. Let's talk about these ratings first. Holy shit. NXT won in the ratings this week by 1,000 people. 693,000 viewers to 692,000 from AEW. Crazy. They had that 1 week where they tied as well. So good for AEW. I mean, good for NXT. They had takeover matches on that show, but AEW was still real good. I might even enjoyed AEW a little bit more. The Jericho on commentary was just phenomenal. Hey, I'm going to take a 2-second cutaway here. Let me just go grab another cold beverage since I'm probably going to need to be drinking more. Hold on. Don't even go anywhere. I'm literally 10 seconds. Fresh beer. All right. Now let's crack open another cold one before we get into these results of these wrestling shows. Sorry about that. Thanks for your patience. What's up, Lambo for life, I think is what that says. Good to see you. All right, let's talk about AEW. So the funniest part about the show is that Chris Jericho sat in with Tony Schiavone on commentary. And Jericho continues to impress. He's the most entertaining guy. I will say this, Jericho was overwhelmingly praised for his work on commentary, and I liked it too. He was hysterical at times. He was insightful at times. He was very entertaining. I think my favorite part of the show was when he could not remember the phrase "educated feet." I don't remember who was in the ring. I think it was Kenny. I think it was a tag match with Omega and Nakazawa. And he's like, "Wow, those feet are really schooled. Those feet went to school. Like, what's it called? Like when feet go to school, like Harvard." And he's trying to remember the line and he can't. And then like 5 minutes go by, and then finally Shivani or something mentions the word educated, and then Jericho goes, "That's it, educated feet." That's what I was trying to say. But I will say this, I'm going to be in the small minority here, is that even though I liked Jericho on commentary, there were a couple of times where he was annoying the shit out of me. I'm sorry. He was just way too loud, trying to constantly be entertaining. I almost thought he was like trying too hard to be entertaining, and he doesn't have to try hard. Jericho's hysterical. So there were a couple of points in the show where I wasn't all about Jericho on commentary, couple of parts of the show where I could have done without him on commentary, but for the most part, he thrived in that, and I would love to see him make guest spots on commentary until he fucking dies. One day in WWE, when this AEW stuff is over and Jericho's 60 years old and long since retired and is free to do whatever he wants, I would love to see him show up on Raw or SmackDown and sit in on commentary and just do his thing. That would be hysterical. So Jericho on commentary was great. It opened up with a Jake Roberts promo on Cody, and they're about to launch that TNT Championship tournament as well that would main event this show. Jake apparently did quarantine himself in his hotel room. He's not going to be working anymore for AEW, I think, until this stops, which is good. He's an older guy. And apparently, according to DDP on Twitter, Jake has arrived back at DDP's house. So he's in good hands here, and DDP will keep him safe and clean and isolated and all that stuff. So best of luck to Jake. I hope we see him back on TV because his promos are still as good as they ever were. We did have Lance Archer opening up the show, completely destroying Alan Angels, or Angels, I think his name is. Some guy beat the shit out of him. He is in the TNT Championship tournament, and he's in the same bracket as Dustin Rhodes, and Cody is on the other side. So the way it looks in the bracket here is that he's going to make it at least to the finals and probably murder Dustin Rhodes along the way. So Archer, at the very least, is in the finals of this thing, and I think right now he's the odds-on favorite to win it. And I don't know when his first match is, maybe next week, not even sure. We had a really good women's match here. Hikaru Shida defeated Britt Baker, and Baker got her nose busted open real bad. I mean, it was just pouring blood out, which I loved, and she was eating it up too. Props to Britt Baker. I love it when a wrestler, when that happens, and they make the best of it. You know, there's some great visuals in that match. It really added a lot to the match, and it added a lot to the end when Hikaru Shida picked up the win, smashing Britt Baker in the face with the knees. Britt Baker was all pissed off in a backstage interview, saying Hikaru Shida is a dirty wrestler and the dirtiest she's ever been in the ring with, and it was a really good match, and it was an interesting match, and Shida, I like Hikaru Shida, so I'm glad she picked up the win there, and Britt Baker showing her toughness there, being able to take a fist or whatever the hell caused her to bust her nose open. She had a deviated septum, apparently. She's still dealing with that. So she might be out for a little while. I'm not sure, but she took that shot like a boss and continued to wrestle despite, you know, all the blood flowing out of her face there. So that was good stuff. We had this ridiculous ass tag team match. I got to give AEW high praise for this tag team match because this is something that they do so incredibly well and so much better than WWE. We had the Best Friends, Chuck and Trent, taking on Kenny Omega and Michael Nakazawa. This was set up in a trailer behind the scenes. Nakazawa and Omega are talking, and Michael is like, you know, we should have a tag team and name our tag team the Best Friends. That should be the name of our team. And Omega kind of is like, he doesn't really care about it, but he's like, yeah, we should be called the Best Friends. And then Orange Cassidy like comes out of the bathroom, and that's when Trent and Chuck bust in, and they're mad. They take offense that these guys want to call themselves the Best Friends. So they start jaw-jacking with each other, and then finally, in the end, they agree to have a match with the name of the tag team on the line. So that all is silly. It was funny just with Orange Cassidy coming out of the bathroom and then going back in there after the whole thing was over was just great. So that's entertaining shit. Then you put the match in the ring and you look at these four guys, they're not all that bad, especially Trent and Omega. So the match was good. It was like a really good tag team match, but it gave you the entertainment elements in there as well. When you had Orange Cassidy getting involved, not wanting to hug. He'll hug his best friends, but he doesn't want to hug the other best friends. I loved all of that. And I think that AEW does that better than WWE. In WWE, it feels like it's either one or the other. It's not both. You either get a segment or a match that's all comedy, or you get a segment of or a match that's taken seriously. And maybe with the exception of the New Day, because they can have some really good matches when Xavier's out there tooting the horn. So maybe aside from them, with WWE, it doesn't feel like this is something they accomplish very well. And you take somebody and something like the Best Friends and like Orange Cassidy, who a lot of fans have opinions of, oh, he's a joke and he shouldn't be in the ring and shit like that. And they balance it. They balance it. I've been a defender of Orange Cassidy and Marco Stunt for a long time. Like, until these guys are, winning world titles with their hands in their pockets, I'd shut the fuck up about them if I were you and just enjoy wrestling being fun and entertaining and tongue-in-cheek sometimes. And as long as it's not too stupid, I have no problem with it. So you have the silly reason for the match. You have the silly stuff in the match, but you still have 4 guys giving us a good match. And in the end, the real Best Friends picked up the victory, pitting Michael Nakazawa, so their name remains intact. And I thought all that was like really good. It was the very definition in my mind of an entertaining match. Not just a funny match, not just an athletic match, but all rolled up into one to produce an entertaining match. So good job there. I really enjoyed that. That was fun stuff. We had, well, actually, before I talk about this, we had like 2 different promo packages for Moxley and Hager. That's going to be the next match. As a matter of fact, I think that match is next week. It's an empty arena match this week on Dynamite. They've already taped that. And when this feud first kind of got kicking, I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, I'm like, oh, well, Hager is going to be a really good first opponent for Moxley. Moxley needs an opponent and a challenger who's credible and who he can beat. And I think Hager's that guy. And they're doing a really good job here. It's almost twofold. They're doing a really, really good job in these promo packages of hyping up Hager and how tough he is and what a badass he is, which in the end, when Moxley beats him, is going to help the way he looks. So with the empty arena match, I don't know if they're going to try to protect Hager at all. Moxley ain't dropping this belt to him. There's just no way in my mind. So Moxley will beat him. Whether or not he beats him in such a way to Hager can stay protected, I don't know. Or he might just beat him outright, because that's what champions should do. Beat everybody clean, right? Especially in your first match, especially in your first program. You shouldn't have any in it sort of wonky finish. But, maybe you could here. Hager is in the inner circle, and it's an empty arena match. I'm assuming that means no rules, no DQ, I'm guessing. So the inner circle could get involved there and could maybe help out. But in the end, whatever happens here, whether it's one match or a series of matches between the two, I can't see Mox dropping the belt next or yet. I think whenever he drops the belt, it'll be in front of fans, for one, and definitely won't be this early on in his reign after he had such a big victory over Chris Jericho. I love this shit. Okay, so it looks like Matt Hardy and Chris Jericho are going to be our next, big singles program, which is going to be fun. Matt Hardy was cutting a promo. They, from the compound in North Carolina, they replayed last week's hysterical Jericho versus Vanguard 1 from Jericho's backyard, where he was in the tub that was hot, or the tub that's hot, and he gets out of it with his jeans or his leather pants or whatever, and chases down the drone and gives it the shirt or whatever. So Matt Hardy's got his own new shirt now, and he burned Jericho's shirt and invites Chris Jericho to come to the Hardy compound for the Elite Deletion. I'm ready for the Elite Deletion. Hell yes. So we're going to get some sort of goofy ass one-on-one shit with Jericho and Hardy. And I'm curious when Jericho goes down to film that, if he'll just like chill there, they'll stay there. I mean, Hardy's got a big house. He can just stay right there and they can fucking party together and shit. That's going to be interesting. So I guess at some point he's going to make the trip to Cameron and they're going to film some Elite Deletion, if they haven't already done it, between Matt Hardy and Chris Jericho. That's going to be fun. You think back to the deletion shit they did in WWE and the deletion stuff they did in Impact, and you add Jericho to this, that's going to be good. Maybe Matt Hardy's debut fell a little bit flat to some fans. You cannot put Chris Jericho inside of one of those deletion videos and it suck. It's impossible. It is guaranteed to be hysterical. It's guaranteed to be great. Does not matter what they do. They can fucking sit there on the floor and eat ham sandwiches. It's going to be entertaining. It can't not be. So I'm ready for that. I'm already laughing because, the dilapidated boats are going to be out in force for that one, and I'm ready. I liked what I saw also this week on Dynamite from the Exalted One. It felt like, this is another credit to AEW. Several times they've done this. Not the first time they've done this, I should say. They pulled back a little bit, I feel, on the Vince McMahon stuff. I felt like it was a little too upfront. I'm fine with the disgruntled talent coming on TV and taking a couple shots at WWE and tickling the fans in that special place because the Vince haters are everywhere. So I'm fine with that, but just don't overdo it. Don't make it the focal point of your gimmick or your character or your company. That's what that's what got TNA in trouble. And just be careful how you do it. And much like the Nightmare Collective, the fans are kind of saying, this fucking sucks, AEW, and they changed it. So AEW sounds to me like they're listening to the audience. They see the complaints. They're not like WWE who just ignore everything said to them on Twitter. They actually read the shit, and they take into consideration the fans' opinion. And I think this might have been one of those situations. Like, okay, our next vignette, unless they filmed all these at once, which they might have, but this one felt like it really pulled back on the first two, especially, when they went real hardcore with the eating dinner and the sneezing and all that stuff. And it's like, okay, this is all funny and everything, but prior to the Exalted One arriving, we weren't thinking this is going to be some Vince McMahon parody. And I don't think it's a good idea for it to be one. I'm fine with the shots. I'm fine with saying things here and there. You're not the first out-of-touch old man to not believe in me. Shit like that's great. Just don't overdo it. And I felt like they were overdoing it. This felt better. There was a promo outside with two shitty dressed masked guys and one well-dressed masked guy. And then Brody Lee had a match later on, I believe with a jobber, and defeated him. Some guy named Johnson beat the shit out of him, won his match. And this was better. So like I said earlier, I mentioned Brody Lee earlier on. He might have been part of the reason why WWE said, all right, fuck it, let's just cut the Revival loose. Brody Lee went over there and, he's not like setting the world on fire. So it's not like they can hurt us, which they should have realized long ago. And I think maybe along with financial reasons, that might have been part of the reason why they just cut the Revival loose, because they're like, well, if they're just going to go over there and do that, then who cares, kind of thing. But either way, I think AEW backing off the Vince stuff with that is a good idea. Like I said, we had the first match in the TNT Championship Tournament main event this show. It was Cody Rhodes versus Shawn Spears. A rematch from when they wrestle All Out. He was All Out. And Spears came in, cracked Cody over the head with a chair and that whole deal, the way that started. So this is kind of like a long-running issue between these two, and they've kind of rekindled it here in the first round. Cody, he won the match here in a really interesting way. I loved it. He hit a couple of crossroads. Shawn Spears showed a lot of resiliency kicking out. And a really interesting finish here that we have seen before. A lot of fans were saying we've never seen it, but I can remember a big match where it happened. Cody Rhodes has got the figure four on Shawn Spears. And he doesn't submit, but he's laying there and his shoulders are down and the referee counts 1, 2, 3. Cody Rhodes wins the match, pinning somebody with a figure four. And Jericho is like, I've never seen that happen. Nobody's ever won a match like that with the figure four. Am I the only one who remembers a WWE title changing hands that way? Ric Flair beat Randy Savage that same way. Randy Savage passed out at the figure four, if I remember right. It was on TV. It's WWF Superstars late in the year, and then Rick would pass the belt immediately off to Brett, like right after that. So it was right after SummerSlam in 92. It was on television. They had the rematch. It was the famous match, I think. I think it was the same match. It was the same match that Vince got pissed and made him go out there and redo it. I think that was the same match. They had to go out there in front of that same audience and redo the whole match because Vince hated it. And I'm pretty sure that was the finish. Randy was in the figure four and he passed out. 1, 2, 3. Title changes hands. So anyway, it has happened before. And that was the finish they went there in this match. And I kind of liked it because it's rare as shit. I'm all for rare finishes. I'm fine with that. So Cody now advances. He's going to face the winner in his bracket of Darby Allin and Sammy Guevara. I don't have the brackets in front of me, so you guys have to correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm pretty sure in Cody's bracket, it's Sammy and Darby. Now, Darby Allin was a lot of fans picked to win this tournament. So I'll read that in a minute, Adrian. A lot of people were picking, Darby Allin should win this title. I agree. I would love it if he won the title. I don't think it's going to happen here, though. He's already beaten Sammy Guevara a couple of times. So I almost see Sammy picking up the upset there with some help from the inner circle. I think he'll defeat Darby Allin because I think Darby's won his matches against Sammy so far. So if he beats him one more time, only to set up another rematch with Cody, a match that they've already had a couple of, right? And for Cody to beat him again and then go to the finals to face Lance Archer, I think it would be better for Cody to beat an inner circle guy in the semifinals rather than Darby Allin. So I kind of think that Sammy Guevara will pick up the upset over Darby, lose to Cody, and then Cody will go on to the finals to face Archer, who just got done murdering his brother, probably in the semifinals. I can't remember who Dustin's wrestling, but I think Dustin needs to win that because if Jake is targeting Cody, Archer needs to destroy the brother, right? So if I had to guess, it's going to be Cody and Archer for the title, and maybe with Archer winning it, because Cody, I think, can just live off being Cody forever. He's already lost his chance to win the AEW title, so if he's the first TV champion, maybe, but I almost think that might be better for Archer. So I kind of see Archer winning it at the moment, but it might change as we get closer. Excuse me, I don't know. What do you guys think? Got a Steve Blackman shout out. Steve Blackman was awesome. Let me go out and bust out another super chat or two and make sure I'm not missing any. I think I'm missing at least 2. Reese Jones, good to see you, man. Awesome Patreon supporter in the house. I think NXT could use this Cruiserweight Championship tournament to create another Shawn Michaels, Razor Ramon IC title situation. Maybe, but like I said, I feel like they're really going out of their way here to make this huge tournament just to crown a champion that they had to strip Jordan of his titles, and then when he comes back, he's going to want the belt back, and then he can bring his own belt with him, and they can hang it up on the ladder, which that's a good idea now that I just said that out loud. I see where you're going there. I didn't think about the 2 titles thing. Didn't even think about that, about a champion being stripped and coming back. That's true, man. Whoever comes out of on the other side of the tournament with the title, you put that person and Jordan Devlin, 2 titles, hanging them up. The true Cruiserweight champion wins. I'd be totally into that, Reese. That's a phenomenal idea. Excellent idea. Have they done brackets for the Cruiserweight title tournament yet? I don't think they have. But if that's the case and they went that far with it, because when Jordan Devlin comes back, he's going to demand an immediate shot, right? So who do you think would make the best match there? Who do you think would be the best opponent for Jordan Devlin? Is Jordan Devlin a heel or face? Whatever Jordan Devlin is, the opposite needs to win the tournament. So if he's a heel, babyface wins. If he's a face, heel wins. But I don't even know what he is. How about that? I've been on YouTube 10 years and I don't even know a wrestler's heel or babyface status. Adrian, thank you again for another one, brother. Appreciate it. Sorry for going off topic, Greg. Out of these 3, who could have been a successful WWF champ? Steve Blackman, Ken Shamrock, and Dan Severn. All were legit sons of bitches. They were. I'd go Shamrock. I think Shamrock was real close. Shamrock was pretty good. I liked him. He wasn't horrible in the ring. He wasn't Brock, and he wasn't Angle. Both those guys that he preceded were better than him. I would have loved to see him stick around because Shamrock left and Angle debuted like 2 months later. So if Shamrock would have stayed around a year, think about how good Kurt got in that first year. Think about late 2000. 1 year after Kurt was there, he was already working title matches with The Rock. He was already winning the title against The Rock. You put Angle and Shamrock together, oh man. I'm still going to go Shamrock. I think of the 3, he was the most marketable. Dan Severn was a badass, but he looked like a 70s porn star or pedophile. Take your pick. And Steve Blackman was also a badass, but again, he kind of just lacked that charisma. I think Shamrock just had a little bit more marketability to him. But any of those guys, Blackman and Severn, weren't they both originally in the Brawl for All 2 and they dropped out? So all of them, I think, were capable. And they even didn't they form the Shooters, little faction? Remember the trio they had going there only for a few weeks on TV? Severn, Shamrock, and Blackman. I'm going to go Shamrock there only for marketing reasons from WWE's perspective, but any of them really could have been champ because they were awesome. All right, let's move into NXT now and talk about this. I'm not going to talk about the whole show. I'm really only going to talk about the 2 big matches because aside from a couple of jobber matches and a lot of promos and hype packages, wasn't a ton to talk about on this, which is a shame. But we got the takeover matches. We got 2 takeover matches. We had, of course, which I'll talk about in a minute, the big empty building match between Gargano and Ciampa. And we had the women's #1 contender ladder match. So the show opened up with that. Mauro Ranallo, by the way, is on commentary solo, right? Which I remember thinking I don't know if I like him solo. I'll just put it that way. I might prefer someone with him. But he still did a good job. He's still Mauro Ranallo. But the women's ladder match to determine the new #1 contender for the women's title was Io Shirai, Tegan Nox, Mia Yim, Dakota Kai, Candice LeRae, and Chelsea Green. I thought this match was really good, but it's just really, and I said the same thing kind of here in AEW, and I'm going to say here the same thing later with Gargano and Ciampa. I'm really struggling to really get invested when there's no crowd. And that sucks because that's a disservice to the wrestlers. These ladies are killing themselves out there. And I just cannot get over the stone cold silence. I just don't like it. And I'm not trying to be an asshole. I appreciate the wrestlers going out there and working for all of us. But man, does it take away from the matches. And I almost feel bad for them that they got to go out there and bump like that in front of nobody and work these matches as if they're in front of a crowd, but no crowd is there. And it just really takes away from the atmosphere, from the electricity, from the near falls, from the close grabs of the belt. Everything is exposed in terms of sound. You can hear everybody breathing, everybody coughing, everybody talking. You can hear what the referee says. And a lot of times when the wrestlers are talking shit, they're not saying anything on TV. When there's a crowd there, they're just moving their lips, pretending to scream at their person because the fans can't hear them. But now you can hear everything, and it's hard for them to adjust to that. And it's hard. And it's not that the match wasn't good. It was really good. There was bumps left and right, some really fun spots in this match as well. But just with no crowd, it's just really tough to appreciate it. And that sucks. I wish I wasn't like that. But I enjoyed the finish, and I enjoyed the winner here. This is who I was hoping would win. The finish saw Io Shirai and Candice LeRae. They were both on the top of the ladder. Candice bumps off, and Io Shirai wins. So she's the new number one contender. And what does that mean? We get Charlotte and Io Shirai. That is a match that I would be fine with. Sign me up. I'll take a plate full of that. I'll even have seconds. Io Shirai and Charlotte? Yes, please. There's also some news in the women's division regarding Rhea Ripley. Rhea Ripley had to go back to Australia because her work visa expired. So this news broke, and it immediately got the fans talking that maybe that affected the outcome of the Charlotte match at WrestleMania. And it could have, but I still say no. Like I mentioned this in my last couple of reviews. I know there's people that are just plenty pissed that Charlotte won and everything. You're not going to be able to avoid that. But what I was trying to look at is realistically what WWE normally does and the way they usually book. It doesn't seem like a very WWE thing to do, to put Charlotte in the ring with Rhea Ripley, win the Royal Rumble, put her in the ring to challenge Rhea Ripley, only to have Ripley beat her and send Charlotte back to Raw, meaning that Charlotte is just a one-time opponent for Rhea Ripley to beat. Does that sound like the way WWE treats Charlotte to you? And I joked that she was being demoted to NXT, but some fans actually took that seriously. Oh, does it sound like WWE for them to send her down to NXT? I don't think they're sending her down there. I don't think it's really that bad. I think Charlotte going there is awesome. And I think it gives her some fresh matchups and stuff. And plus, she's winning a very prestigious championship. Would you guys agree that the NXT title is more credible than the Raw or SmackDown? I would say, yeah. Maybe not now with the Raw, because Ronda held it for a year, followed by Becky holding it for a year. But still, I think the fans take the NXT titles the NXT championships a little more seriously. And so for Charlotte to win that, it's certainly not a demotion. I said that as a joke. I was surprised that some fans actually took that seriously. So I don't see Charlotte losing that match regardless of what Rhea's visa issue. Now, I'm sure fans are going to use that as an excuse, but I don't know why. Because the fans that are going to use that as an excuse that Rhea lost are the same fans that say Charlotte is given the world. Well, what logic does that make? If you think Charlotte is given everything, why all of a sudden is your mind changed? That's not the case, and she was just going to go job to Rhea Ripley and be sent right back to Raw. And based on the way that Becky Lynch and Shayna ended their WrestleMania match, that issue ain't over. So if Charlotte goes back, she ain't got nobody to work with. Where do they put her in the ring with? Natty for a program or something? This is much more useful. This is a better use of Charlotte and a better use of her value. Put her in NXT for a little while, have some great matches down there, and then somebody down there gets to beat her for that belt. That's a good thing. It'll be the biggest victory of anyone in NXT. An NXT person, do you realize that? An NXT person now gets to be the person to defeat what will be the greatest female wrestler WWE has ever had. That's a great feather in the cap of anyone. And I'm hoping that anyone is Rhea Ripley. I'm hoping Charlotte has a couple of matches, because now Io Shirai has to face Charlotte, so the whole world is going to insist that Io Shirai has to win, and if she doesn't, then she's buried and all that shit. So we got to get through this and everything, and we probably have to get through Charlotte winning a couple of matches, but in the end, I want Ripley to beat her, and I think that she will. I don't know how work visas work. Do any of you go to other countries and live there and shit like that? How does it work? If they expire, don't you know they're going to expire? How does something like that fall through the cracks? I highly doubt that this is something like, oh shit, we didn't realize it expired. Oh, you got to go back to Australia. We better take the belt off of you. Even if Ripley had to go back there, I don't think they would have stripped her. I don't think they would have put the belt on Charlotte. I think they were going to put the belt on Charlotte anyway. So that's my opinion. I'm not saying I'm right. I don't have any insider knowledge here. That's just me being a logical fucking wrestling fan. And I seriously doubt based on what I know of WWE and their formula and what they normally do and the way they normally behave, every sign in the world here was pointing to Charlotte winning this belt and hanging in NXT for a little while, losing and coming back. Because coming back now and dropping one match to Rhea Ripley, shouldn't we, by the wrestling fans' logic, shouldn't that mean that Charlotte is buried? Boy, they send her down to NXT for one match and she gets beat clean and comes back. Boy, they really buried her. Anybody else other than Charlotte that would be put in that position, that's what the fans would say. Boy, they buried her, but not Charlotte. So to me, it makes sense that Charlotte won. And I just personally seriously doubt the visa issue had anything to do with it, but maybe it'll come to find out that I'm wrong, and that was the reason. But again, if that was the reason, that would surprise me very much. I'll just put it that way. Let's get into we had a couple of jobber matches that I didn't even write down. Adam Cole promo. We had a couple of, we had one Walter and Finn Balor hype package, I believe, as well. Can't wait to see whenever that match actually finally happens. So there's a lot of filler on the show, basically killing time to get to the main event, the final battle, Rebel Heart versus Blackheart, Johnny Gargano versus Tommaso Ciampa, empty arena match, empty building match, set up by Triple H a couple weeks ago. And, you guys do me a favor. I'm realizing that my likes suck, and there's 300 people in here. Will you guys please hook me up with a like? I would really, really appreciate it. And I promise you I'll give you some great comments on Gargano and Ciampa here. So they arrive for their match. Triple H greets them in the ring and leaves a chair and be like, all right, fuck each other up. Have a good time. Here's a referee to basically make sure nobody dies and have at it. So Triple H kind of welcomes them there, and the brawl just immediately ensues. Now, I liked this a lot because it was different than all three of the other matches. It was different than the Last Man Standing match, different from Boneyard, different from Funhouse, but took elements of all three. And one of the big things they did was all the camera angles, was the interesting kind of artsy type of camera shots they were trying to get. The lighting was a little bit different. This whole match was edited too, to kind of flow a little bit better. And I enjoyed the way it was shot. A lot of close-ups. But again, much like the ladder match and much like all of these empty arena matches, it's just so hard for me to get invested the same way I would if there was 20,000 people in the arena, because these two have had some wars, y'all. We've seen what these two guys can do in front of an arena. My favorite match is where Gargano took the knee brace and just fucking pulled back on Ciampa like that. What takeover was that from? And the great story they've had, this rivalry that's been going on for a couple of years now. It dates all the way back. I'll never forget the picture that was put on Twitter. I think it was by Johnny Gargano right after the Festival of Friendship when Owens turned on Jericho. Whatever year that was, 2017 or something. And Gargano put on, because remember Kevin Owens threw Jericho through the very expensive, obscenely expensive Jeritron 5000. And so there's a picture on Twitter of Gargano and Ciampa in the apartment, and Gargano is removing the TV from the wall because he doesn't want Ciampa to turn on him and throw him through the fucking TV. And then it wound up happening, and then he turned on him. And I said, prior to this match happening, if you trace it all back to how it started, I feel like Gargano's got to get the last laugh here. Whether he's a heel or a babyface or not, doesn't matter. He needs to be the one to end it, I think, is what they had to do here. And that's what I kind of thought was going to happen. I thought Gargano would win. Now, the match itself, like I said, the way it was shot was interesting, and props to WWE for at least, this is the fourth match now where they've really tried different things in the face of the pandemic. We might have been getting a glimpse here of how a lot of wrestling is going to be. Feels like we're getting some optimistic news here about the virus, but if it still gets worse and we're still months and months away from getting life back to normal, at least for fans being able to go back to sporting events, because life might resume before that's even able to happen. So we might slowly ease our way back into normalcy than just doing it all at once, full blown. So it might be a long time before fans are back in the arena. And if that's the case, you got to try to come up with different ideas so you're not boring the shit out of us every week with these quiet ass matches. So doing things like this, I think, is good. AEW is doing the same thing. They're about to have a compound match with Hardy and Jericho, and WWE did a really good job, I think, with all four of their matches in the past week. So I liked all this, but the guys just went out there. I mean, they literally wrestled as if they were in front of an audience. Same type of bumps, crazy table spots, just hard back bumps on concrete. They had every weapon imaginable out there. And I think that I talked about the adrenaline, and how these guys can really probably hurt themselves with a lot less flowing through blood than normal when you got a crowd out there. And this match was the absolute epitome of that. I thought maybe Edge and Orton was, but this match I think even exceeded that because these guys are smaller guys, and to see them take these type of bumps, to me, it's just insane for guys with not that much body mass to be like landing the way they're landing. They took a page from Jon Moxley and Kenny Omega, almost the exact same thing. They peeled back the mat to expose the planks underneath the ring. They did it in the same part of the ring that Omega and Moxley did. You realize that? They peeled apart the same part of the corner and the same amount, exposing the same looking boards that they did with Moxley and Omega, which I thought was interesting. They were taking bumps left and right on that. Now, in the end, we got this like triple back at you swerve, which I loved. These two guys are basically spent. They're in the ring. They can barely fucking even do anything to each other anymore. And that's when Candice LeRae comes in. She comes in. She looks at both of them sitting there. She goes, "What are you guys doing?" And again, this is where the crowd was really needed because she's acting as if an audience is there. She's not talking. She's saying like, "What are you guys doing?" You know, she's like yelling, but not yelling. You know what I mean? She's yelling, but she's yelling the way she would if there was an audience there, where she doesn't have to scream at the top of her lungs. Not the best acting. I know everybody preferred this match over Edge and Orton, but Edge is a far better actor than Candice LeRae is. And she's kind of giving both guys shit. She goes, "Look at what you've done, Tommaso. You've made me hate my husband." Because Candice is a babyface. Johnny is a heel. And so she's, "I hate who he's become. I can't stand this. I'm going to put an end to this." And then she dick kicks her own husband. Kicks Johnny Gargano right in the balls. He goes down. She goes, "I'm putting an end to this." And she leaves. And then you kind of see Ciampa, who's now a babyface after starting this whole mess a couple of years ago, you know, and knee injuries and everything that prolonged this whole feud. He's now showing remorse for his friend. He's now showing some second thoughts, and he even starts talking. They start talking to each other. Now, this is the part where the no fans, I think, helped because you could kind of hear it. You know, I'm sorry. And it looked like they're kind of come back together. And that's when Candice shows back up and nails Ciampa with a dick kick. He goes down. Johnny Gargano reaches in his tights, pulls out a cup, and Candice turns heel. And that allows Gargano to get the victory and put down Ciampa and end this final battle between the two. Exactly probably the way it was needed to. You know, Gargano, I think, needed to win in the end, but having the help from his wife, who now kind of turned heel, I thought was a good way to kind of somewhat protect Ciampa, you know, because it took two of them to beat him. And it was great. The whole thing was great. And then after that, Gargano and Candice kind of hobble outside of the arena. They're leaving. They go all the way outside through the doors. And as they're walking to their car, they pass a car that's got a light on in it. And you see what appears to be Scarlett Bordeaux and Killer Kross. And Killer Kross, his vignette made the debut a few weeks before when they were hyping the match with Gargano and Ciampa. So that's twice now. Kross has kind of made an appearance in their issue, and I'm wondering if he now gets in the ring with one of these guys or whatever. So we saw him on screen one week. We now see him in a car. We'll see what happens in future weeks. But yeah, Killer Kross is on the verge of debuting here. And again, just yet another debut, much like Brody Lee, much like Matt Hardy, and much like potentially some others like the Revival and stuff. It sucks that this can't be done in front of an audience. But good stuff all around there. Again, much like Edge and Orton, just props to Gargano and Ciampa for murdering their bodies. Completely destroyed themselves out there. For us. You know? And so much like fans didn't appreciate the length of Edge and Orton, I kind of didn't appreciate like the no fans thing here. It just sucks. I just really want an audience. Sometimes it works without it, but you know, in this case, I like this match all right, but it was probably my third favorite of the four. I'd probably go Boneyard, Firefly, Gargano, Ciampa, Edge, Orton is how I'd rank them. You guys can tell me if you agree or not. And that pretty much does it for the Wednesday Night Wars. We'll hop into SmackDown and Raw here in a second. But let me cruise back over here and knock out some super chats before we move on to other forms of business. All right, we've been going almost 2 hours already, so I knew this would be a long one. Then I'll answer some questions, and then I'll get out of here. All right, where are we at? I guess I'm just missing two. No, just one. Oh, A Level. Okay, no question answer there. You just sent a $10 super chat. I appreciate it. Mr. Level, always a pleasure to see you in here. Oh, no, and I got one more from Adrian. There we go. Thanks again, brother. Congrats again on 10 years, Greg. I'm headed to bed. It's 3:45 a.m. here in Lockdown, Ireland. I'll catch up on demand tomorrow. All right, man, appreciate it. I hope you're still with us and you haven't got haven't left sick of waiting for me to answer your super chat. But good night to you, and hope to catch you on Monday. I'll be back up here again Monday night, immediately following Raw, and we'll talk about whatever the hell we have to talk about. That's graphic mystery. All right, just reading some of that stuff there. All right, let's move into Raw and SmackDown for the week. Thanks for getting those likes up, guys. I appreciate it. But I could use a few more. Can you guys keep smashing that? 350 of you in here. Give me like 200 likes. I'd super appreciate it. Give it to me as like my 10-year birthday present, please. Please, I'm in double digits now. 2 decades on YouTube we're venturing into. My God. All right. The only thing I want to mention about this past week's Raw, because I came up on Monday and did a review of it, so if you want to check back at my comments from this past week's Raw, please do that. The video is up on my channel right now. But the big news on Raw was that immediately following WrestleMania this past weekend, they taped a match between Drew McIntyre and The Big Show for the WWE title. Drew McIntyre, 20 minutes after beating Brock, was interviewed in the ring. He's interrupted by The Big Show, who challenges Drew to a match. Drew initially backs down, but eventually agrees to the match after being pestered by The Big Show, and gets worked over pretty good before coming back and beating Big Show with at least one Claymore, maybe 2, and retaining the title. And a lot of people ask, does this mean that Big Show main evented WrestleMania? And it kind of does. He wrestled the last match at WrestleMania, even though it wasn't on TV. So in a lot of ways, Big Show main evented WrestleMania, which is just bizarre. Now, also, this was a pretty good way, I suppose, of building Drew pretty strong. I mean, beating the Big Show really in this stage of his career is nothing, but beating him 20 minutes after beating Brock is something. I wouldn't be able to beat my meat after a match with Brock, much less a 500-pound giant. Sorry for being graphic, but it's true. So you can't look any stronger than that. Beat one giant and then another? Holy crap. So that's pretty strong if you ask me. So it was a big showcase for Drew. My heart goes out for this man. The little chronicle they did on him in WWE, they talked about the coronavirus. I've been giving WWE shit for not mentioning, being too chicken shit to even mention that there's a pandemic on TV, but they didn't shy away from it in that chronicle, and they talked about the COVID-19 pandemic costing Drew. They had to get his ass home real quick because he was in Ireland, and that's when he was there, I guess, is when he was learning that WrestleMania will not be in front of the fans in Tampa. It's going to be the empty arena, and he seemed really bummed about it, and I don't blame him. Imagine if you're Edge, imagine if you're Drew McIntyre with these moments that you're just waiting to have, and then it's all taken away from you like that. And they made the best of it. You know, Drew and Brock probably had the exact same type of match that they would have in front of WrestleMania. No strikes, no kicks, no punches, just a whole match full of finishers, like everything in WWE's booked. But it still would have been good to see. Drew beat Brock. The crowd would have popped huge. Would have been an awesome moment for him. So since they went in an empty arena, they tried to add a little bit to it. Oh, we can tape a second match. We'll air this shit on Raw, kill some time, and it'll make Drew look even stronger in the process. So I get all of that, but it was kind of like head scratching. I'm like, really? That's what you're doing? So that's all I really wanted to mention about Monday Night Raw. In terms of who Drew works with from here, there was talk about Tyson Fury. They've kind of been making some noise with each other. That would make very little sense to me for that match to take place, but apparently it might. But if it's not Tyson Fury, let's hope, and Drew then moves on to another roster member to feud with, it's got to be somebody. I guess place your bets. I think most of the time we thought it was going to be, so far we're thinking it would be Seth Rollins maybe, working with Drew, especially if they do some sort of a number one contenders match. You know, after Seth went down clean to Owens at WrestleMania, he can kind of slip in the back door and win a number one contenders match and be in contender for Drew and hopefully get beat by Drew. We talked about Seth going to SmackDown too, but I doubt they'd split up Seth and Becky, so he'll probably stay put on Raw. Oh my God, A-Level. Thank you for another one, man. Thank you for $25 super chat. Very generous of you to follow in with a couple of $10 ones you've already thrown at me. Appreciate it, man. Congratulations on 10 years. Well, thanks for being here. Thanks to all y'all for being here. It's hysterical. I'm sorry, I was reading Big Mike's comment. It's not hysterical, it's awesome. Mike's smiley faces are hysterical, though. Oh yeah, I didn't think if this WrestleMania counts as Big Show main eventing it. Yeah, I didn't say it was his first. Yeah, he main evented the one right here up the road in Anaheim. At 16, man, that WrestleMania was bad. That was the WrestleMania with no singles matches, right? Can you believe that? Can you believe that? Still can't believe it looking back. And I don't even think it occurred to me at the time. That there was no singles matches when I was watching that WrestleMania, but there wasn't. Jericho and Angle and Benoit even worked a three-way. So anyway, that's all I wanted to mention on Monday Night Raw was the Drew McIntyre Big Show stuff. Now, we'll get into SmackDown. Last night's SmackDown, I did some live tweeting during that. I pulled up, because I can't watch SmackDown here on the West Coast until it airs local time on Fox. So anytime I want to watch SmackDown live, I got to pull up a bad boy stream, an illegal stream. Please don't tell the police. And I pretty much watched it with you guys. Not a whole lot going on here, although there is something interesting to talk about at the end, which I just cannot believe they're doing this. But anyway, let's talk about the first match. They decided that the Kabuki Warriors needed to lose again. Don't know why. So they put Kabukis in a rematch against Bliss and Cross. I know that rematches are not an automatic thing anymore, but they did one anyway here. Luckily, Kairi Sane took the pin, and Cross and Bliss retained, which I figured they would. Later on in the night, they were challenged by Dana Brooke and Carmella. Kind of a random team there, but Bliss and Cross are a pretty strong team. I thought that they got together the same way that Nia Jax and Alexa Bliss did when Alexa got caught making fun of Nia's weight and shit. It clearly seemed like Alexa was using Nikki at first, kind of annoyed by her, get the hell away from me here, type of thing. And now it seems like they're actually friends, and it might not turn out the way we thought. We just assumed Bliss would do the same thing to Nikki that she did to Nia, get caught shitting on her or something like that behind the scenes, maybe by the GTV thing that we saw here recently. But right now it seems like they're friends and they're baby faces. So they're going to be facing Brooke and Carmella next. And if that match does come to happen, I'm sure it will, and the titles are on the line, I don't see Bliss and Cross losing the titles anytime soon right now. We had Dolph Ziggler defeating Tucker. Now we had Otis and Mandy have their big emotional moment at WrestleMania. Tucker kind of rubbed that in Ziggler's face a little bit. I think he even showed pictures of Mandy and Otis together, which is gross. Kind of like to see Sonya backing up Dolph Ziggler. They're an interesting pair. Ziggler got the win here, beating Tucker, and that was what it was. So this whole issue is not done yet. I'm still wondering in the end if we get some sort of a crazy swerve. We've got Sonya and Dolph now together. You would imagine that's going to lead to a mixed tag, Sonya, Dolph, Otis, and Mandy at some point. But again, much like so many other angles and matches in wrestling right now, this one, almost more than anything else, really needs an audience. And it's just a shame that this great writing and this great build with Otis and Mandy is now starting to climax here in front of no fans. Just sucks. Shitty situation. The plot thickened, or the plot was stirred a little bit more with Bayley and Sasha Banks. Bayley's in the ring with Sasha, cutting a victory promo and retaining the title at WrestleMania. Tamina, of all people, comes out to the ring and says a whole bunch of terrible lines of dialogue. And Bayley basically says, all right, if you want a shot at the title, all you got to do is beat the greatest of all time, my best friend, Sasha Banks. And Sasha doesn't look none too pleased about this. So Bayley kind of offers up and, just offers up Sasha without even asking her to face Tamina, which I don't know why Sasha's so worried. Tamina is not like, a huge threat right now. So just kind of the looks between them, very subtle. They're really dragging it out. Not sure yet if they're really trying to make this thing last until SummerSlam at this pace with something, with something shady or sketchy literally happening between the two of them every single week. I don't know if it has the legs to make it to SummerSlam. But if it did, that's where I would do the match because it's in Boston, hopefully. And that's Sasha's home turf. And it'll be a good match for her to have there. So we'll see when this drama eventually boils over. But that it will. I had almost forgotten about those Sons. The Forgotten Sons debuted randomly, probably because they were there in Orlando. Got brought up to face the Lucha House Party. Well, actually, I should not say that they were brought up because after WrestleMania, we always see a bunch of call-ups. So the Forgotten Sons probably are there now, but I was never really a fan of them in NXT. Don't care much about them, and had a pretty successful debut match against the Pinata Party. Sheamus defeated a jobber. They also had a really dumb segment between, it's somewhat entertaining because everybody in the segment is entertaining, but a dumb result. The New Day, Miz and Morrison, and the Usos are all out there cutting promos on each other. Big E is the one that suggests that since at WrestleMania, one member from each team got a chance to compete for the tag team titles, that they should let the other three members of each team compete for the tag team titles. And in his words, compete for the delicious, juicy, and lickable tag team titles. I don't think we need to be licking anything right now. And that match apparently is going to happen next week. I think it's going to happen next week. So yeah. So I guess that's going to be Big E, Jay, and Miz will face for the tag team titles again. I guess it'll be a ladder match just like at WrestleMania. So we're going to get that match, I'm guessing, next week. I didn't catch when they said it was going to happen, but I guess it'll be next week. We also had... Oh, no, that was it. We're just on the main event here. So the only thing I'm going to talk about last on SmackDown is the main event. Braun Strowman, new Universal Champion, who defeated Goldberg, which I'm still flabbergasted about, defeated Shinsuke Nakamura. Was that match for the title? I think it was a title match. Won the match. No big surprise there. And after, he's interrupted by Bray Wyatt and the Firefly Funhouse. Bray talked about how much he taught Braun Strowman and says that he has something that he wants back. And Braun says, I'm not going to play your games. Let me in. Or I'll let you in. Or I'll let you in, maybe he said. Whatever, he's down. He's down for a fight with Bray Wyatt. So that means that's our program here. Bray Wyatt and Braun Strowman. Will somebody please get out a pie chart and show me detailed reasons as to why Goldberg beat Bray Wyatt in Saudi Arabia? I know the plans got fucked up now, because the plan obviously was for Roman to beat Goldberg. That was going to happen. Roman should be the WWE champion right now. But now, look at what this company has done to themselves. So now they have Strowman as the champion. He's now going to face Bray Wyatt. So you mean to tell me that they're going to put this belt back on Bray Wyatt? Which, if they did that, why the fuck did they take it off of him to begin with in that shitty match with Goldberg? And there was some story that Goldberg apparently insisted on winning that match, which nobody credible that I get wrestling news from has said that. I've heard that from other people. But if Goldberg was like, no, I'm not going to lose to him, and then maybe that's why the match sucks so bad. Maybe that's why Bray was like, fine, just spear me and pin me. I don't give a fuck if it's going to be like this. But now they're in a situation where Wyatt, he can't lose to Strowman, can he? Not after beating John Cena. I'd like to see Bray Wyatt try. I'd like to just pretend that match in Saudi Arabia never happened. If we can just strike it from the record, then, no big deal here. But now what this means, I guess, I'm assuming that Roman Reigns has no heat for not wanting to wrestle. He better fucking not. Not from the fans, not from his peers, and certainly not from those dickhead WWE managers and personnel and creative people. He has leukemia. He should not be out there, and him not wanting to wrestle is fine. So I'm assuming he's going to have no heat for that. If he doesn't, what does this mean? It means they're probably going to go through what their original plan was all along once the pandemic gets better, and the plan was to have Roman be the champion after WrestleMania, so they're probably still going to do that, which means Bray Wyatt is going to beat Braun Strowman for the title only to get beat by Roman, which is the match we all thought was originally going to happen at WrestleMania anyway. Remember? It was like, oh, it's going to be Bray Wyatt and Roman Reigns. Even when the match was announced with Goldberg, I'm like, Goldberg sucks. Look what happened to him the last time he was in Saudi Arabia. He embarrassed himself out there. The WWE is not going to sacrifice this character of Bray Wyatt, the Fiend character they've spent so much time, money, and energy rebuilding, and have him get speared and pinned by Goldberg. No fucking way that happens. And it happened. It happened in the worst way ever. He took 4 shitty spears and the worst looking jackhammer I've ever seen in my life and pinned Bray Wyatt 1, 2, 3, completely raping that character of any sort of strength or believability at all. Not that it was believable in the first place, but especially after what you saw Seth Rollins do to him, smash him in the face with mallets, cover him in tons of steel, like electrocute his ass, and he survives all of that, and he gets speared by Goldberg and pinned. So it almost makes that match more annoying now that it happened, because it was all for nothing. There was no reason to even put that belt on Goldberg. So now what you've done is you went and had Goldberg be a transitional champion in order to pass the belt from Bray to Roman. Now Bray is going to be a transitional champion to pass the belt from Strowman to Roman. You could just do Strowman and Roman. You could just turn Strowman heel and do that match again. I'd rather see that. If Roman is going to win the title, I'd much rather have him beat Strowman than Bray Wyatt. But now with Bray Wyatt getting what appears to be a title shot, and since the only reason, you got to wonder how Strowman feels. The big idiot blocked me on Twitter because I gave him shit for being a dick to independent wrestlers. But how do you think he feels like deep down about winning that title? Because I was in love with Strowman. I was in love with Strowman to a Bret Hart level 3 years ago, where I'm like, put the title on this guy now. He's the only guy in the company that I thought needed that title more than anyone, as far as just making a real huge star, another big star. And they never did it. And so now he's got it, and the only reason he got it is because Roman Reigns didn't want to wrestle. So do you think he feels proud of it? Do you think he feels like he accomplished it? Because he didn't. He wasn't even going to be on the fucking card. until this happened. So I just kind of wonder, like, when he looks at that belt, you hear the stories of, when a wrestler wins the world title, they sit and they look at it in the hotel and they take it all in. If I was him, I wouldn't have that same feeling here, because I'm like, they just gave it to me because they had nobody else to give it to, kind of thing. So I guess that now, do you guys agree? Do you think that Wyatt's going to take the belt off of Strowman and then pass it to Roman? So that all sucks. There's nothing good about that at all. And it's not going to do anything to help Bray. Now he's going to have to take that loss to Roman that we didn't want him to take in the first place, and now you got to add the loss to Goldberg on top of it. So shit, man. If you want to pass the belt to Roman so badly, I'd much rather have them turn Strowman heel than have Roman beat him. Because Strowman is easy to not like right now. Especially after his social media posts recently. So fans should have no problem booing him. So I just turn him heel and do it that way. I don't know, but it's kind of, it's just messed up that how that all happened. How WWE just jumbled up their own shit. Cannot believe they even called Goldberg to come in and do anything. He was so unnecessary, so pointless. There was no reason whatsoever to put the belt on him. And then they did. They regretted it, and now they find themselves back at square one where they were before. Ish. And we also got us an announcement on SmackDown last night as well that on April 24th, a few weeks from now, they're going to be celebrating on SmackDown Triple H's 25 years in the company, which is about right. He came in around this time in 95. I don't remember seeing him debut until the summer of 95, but I'm sure he was in the company. And this is the 25th year. So some more time-killing stuff for SmackDown. They'll probably show a classic match of Triple H or talk about his career or do something to kind of fill the time. But since Raw is a 3-hour show, they should be doing that shit on Raw if they're trying to kill time. But that begins all on SmackDown on the 24th, if anybody's interested. So that is the end of my notes. Now what we can do is I can hang out and drink some cold brew and answer some questions and chill for a bit. And then I'll go ahead and get out of here. I think this is a really successful 10-year podcast. I wasn't going to do anything special for this episode. Just say, hey, it's 10 years. Cheers to us, right? But aside from that, aside from today's video, I wasn't going to make too big a deal about this, but I appreciate everybody hanging out tonight and joining me and supporting me verbally, financially, everything. You guys are the best. Appreciate it. Here's the first question I'll answer. Israel Massey, why is WWE so stupid? We will never know. We will never know. The company can be brilliant at times, and it can be so gut-wrenchingly stupid other times. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating for all of us, man. Let me go over to your Twitter first and Patreon, see if there's any questions over there, because I did put up a Patreon post, but I put it up super late, so I doubt anybody saw it. Let me grab some Twitter questions over here if anybody sent them to me. Barry, are you in here right now? You in the chat? You ask me, favorite WrestleMania theme song. Yours is Step Up by Drowning Pool. I don't even remember I don't even know what Step Up is. Which WrestleMania was Step Up? Was that maybe like 19 or 18? It's got to be one of those, right? If I'm going to be an old man, my favorite WrestleMania theme is the one that they used, the classic one, basically the first one that they used from like WrestleMania 6 through 8, 6, 7, and 8. That one. That's my favorite song. The cheesy one that they came out with in 93 that was the theme for a lot of years, several years in WWE, the kind of poppity beepity boppity one, the one that Linda McMahon used as her theme song. I probably like those two the best. But I guess you're talking about actual songs, and I can't even say it. It tears my heart out to say this. It rips my heart out. You have no idea how little artistic respect I have for Limp Bizkit. But that song at WrestleMania 17 fit Austin and Rock so perfectly, and is still my favorite video package of all time in WWE. And it's a Limp Bizkit song. I should be gut and quartered for saying that, but it's true. I can't help it. I got to be honest. I'm all about honesty. Hey, shut up, computer. Let me turn that down. So yeah, I'd go with that one. I'd go with the very first one, the Jim Johnson produced one, or maybe even Limpy Biscuit. Limpy Biscuit. All right. So we're good on the questions there. Oh, thank you for that, Clyde Wendell Slater. I got to retweet that. Appreciate that. You can't join us live, apparently, but you send me a message in here. I must have missed that, dude, but I did see it on Twitter. Thank you, brother. All right, we're good there. jump over to the chat next. Where are we at? All right. See what you guys have to say over here. Oh, yeah, there. Barry's here. Show yourself. Show yourself. Gangrel, best theme ever. That was a good theme. That was also on WWF The Music Volume 3. Like I said, go and watch my my collection video today. I showcased all the weird-ass shit that I have. And that was a fun video to make. And the reason I wanted to make it is because I had a good time producing the Jericho video. And I'm like, this is a different type of style of editing that would, be fun to do. Sometimes, putting commentaries and stuff together can be a little bit of a chore. But I really wanted to do something to kill the time because we're quarantined and we're self-isolated. And I've got plenty of time to kind of go through my stuff and organize it and take pictures and put it all together and made a really fun video. I worked on that all this week and I had a good time doing it. So I'd like to do more things like that, although make them shorter. My Jericho video and the one today were both like nearly 40 minutes long, 35 minutes long. So I'd like to like cut that in half. And anytime I do videos like that in the future, I'd rather keep them to the 10 and 20 minute range. And maybe try to do them. We're in our second decade on YouTube now, so I primarily did this video only because it would be a fun video to do in my spare time, since I have a shitload of spare time right now. But if I do more of that stuff in the future, I'd like to be them to be shorter and things like that. So we'll see what kind of updates I can, or what kind of videos I can give you guys in the future. But this one was really fun to make. So, and a lot of you guys over the years too, I get questions all the time, like, well, how do you stream, and what is your computer like, and what kind of camera do you have, and all shit like that. So I went through all that. I talked about my setup and my computers and how I produce these things, and what I use and all of that. So it was a long time coming, because those questions, I got a shitload of them saved in my email box just throughout the years, just questions asking that. And I was like, one day I need to go through like a thorough description of like what I do. So that was all included in today's episode. And it was like 36 minutes long, something like that. So it's a long ass video, but it was fun to make. It was fun to do. And it was nice to kind of chronicle and document all the shit I have, because I've always been meaning to take pictures of this stuff, and cost of living is so expensive in San Diego. I don't have like a separate room for all this stuff. I have to keep all this stuff like in my main apartment. Luckily, my girlfriend does not think I'm a psycho and finds nothing at all wrong with this at all. But that was my nerd video that I released to you guys today. I'm like, hey, want to see what a big nerd I am? Here you go. Enjoy. So I hope you guys enjoyed that video. If you have not seen it, please go look at it. Like I said, give it a like, give it a share, and throw a comment down below. I'd super, super duper appreciate it. All right, let's answer some more questions. And hang on, I got a super chat rolling in from somewhere. Jordan Smith, thank you, man, for $5 more. Hardest wrestling death. Oh, that's easy, man. Mine was Owen. I was there in 99. You were there? Is there anyone else besides Chris Benoit that will never go into the WWE Hall of Fame? Anyone else? Well, let's start one at a time here. The hardest wrestling death for me by far was Owen Hart. That's another video I want you guys to check out. Last year, in May, I did a 20-year anniversary of his death, this day in history. And it was about a 40-minute long podcast. I talked a lot about Owen Hart. Felt like I covered a lot. One of my favorite episodes I've ever done. And I think one of my best ones I've ever done in terms of like just overall commentaries or podcasts. So if anybody has not seen that one, please go look it up. 10-year anniversary of Owen Hart's death. Just search it on my channel. It'll pop right up. And let me know what you think of it. But I talk a lot about that death. I talk a lot about the night that it happened and being there in my house with people. Daniel, who might be in the chat right now, he was there with me. We watched all this shit happen, and it was just gut-wrenching. Still cannot believe to this day, 21 years later, that it happened. And it's going to be really hard to watch that Dark Side of the Ring when that comes out. I think that's the series finale this year. And to watch that episode and see that it has Martha Hart's full cooperation, and she's interviewed for this, and his kids are, I need to like prepare for that. I need to like mentally get ready for like 72 hours before I even sit down and watch that thing. Kind of like the Chris Benoit stuff. It was so crazy. Now, the other part of your question, what wrestler other than Chris Benoit will never go into the Hall of Fame? I just got to think there's others, people with like maybe severely bad blood, maybe anybody involved in that concussion lawsuit. We've talked about tag teams like Demolition. Part of the reason for that is because of that stuff. So I'm not sure who out there right now will never go in. There's plenty of guys that have done fucked up shit, but they might not have gone into the Hall of Fame anyway, But Benoit's the only one for sure that I can think of. I mean, even Jimmy Snook is in, to be honest. So at this point, I'd say Benoit, and anybody else that's just a really evil son of a bitch probably wouldn't have gone in anyway. But you guys throw out suggestions. Help Jordan out there. Who else do you guys think is just a hard no for the Hall of Fame? Because Benoit will never go in. And for most people, I feel like there is no such thing as never. Even with Owen Hart, I think there will be a day, but not in the near future. But it's possible, where Benoit is just not possible. There will never be a time where anybody will say, yeah, I think enough time's passed, we can put him in now. No, it's not going to happen. So I can't think of very many people that are that definite. You know, if Bruno and the Warrior are going in, anybody's going in, you know, unless you kill your fucking family. I mean, my biggest regret is Savage, that Savage could not go in. I felt like he was there. It was finally starting to happen. Remember, he did the toy commercial. And I'm like, all right, that's it. Much like Bret Hart, when he came back after all those years to do the DVD, that got the foot in the door, that got the ball rolling, that got the initial conversation going with Vince and Bret and got him to the Hall of Fame a year later. And I think with that toy commercial in like 2011, that could have been the beginning for Savage. And then in early 2012, he died. Or was it 2011? Can't remember. But I felt like he was on his way back and they just didn't make it in time. Still one of my biggest regrets. I feel for Vader too. Vader should have made it in prior to him dying. But other than that, I don't know. I mean, even Fabulous Moolah watched her Dark Side of the Ring episode too. She's in. Everybody's in. So I don't know. You guys got to help me. Carlos Colon's a good one too. He should not be in there. That situation with Brody was so fucked up, and you cannot convince me that he didn't play a role at all. Jose, that's what I'm saying, chat. So yeah, of course Jose Gonzalez isn't going to go into the Hall of Fame, but he wouldn't have gone in anyway. Even if he didn't kill Brody, he would not be going to the Hall of Fame. I don't feel. Andrew, what is my favorite Bret Hart moment in WWE? Got to go WrestleMania 10. It has my favorite Bret Hart match ever in the opening match. Not so much my favorite at the end, and I hated the finish. Yokozuna losing his balance and falling down. But the moment of Bret winning the belt back after I was thirsting for him to win for a full year, watching him pass it off to Hogan and vomiting for a solid year throughout 1993, to finally win the belt back was heaven for me. And to see him out there being like hoisted up in Madison Square Garden, no less, was a stark contrast from his first win. He won his first title on a non-televised event against Ric Flair that nobody saw for like months later until it came out in Coliseum video. His second victory in Madison Square Garden, biggest show of the year, main event, wins the title. Favorite Bret Hart moment easily. But that's just because it was just a good moment personally. I mean, he's had a lot of good moments. The match with Owen, the match with Shawn, the match with Austin at WrestleMania 13. Even just moments on TV. You know, one of my favorite things that Bret Hart ever did, and one of my favorite moments ever on Monday Night Raw. There's Daniel. Oh yeah, Luger's a good one. Luger's a good option. There's somebody who will never get in. Shit, I forgot what I was talking about now. The hell was I talking about? Sorry, I saw Daniel in here. Oh yeah, I was talking about Bret Hart and his great moments. One of my favorite moments ever was in 97, right after WrestleMania 13, when he reunited with Davey and Owen was crying, and Bret kind of rubbed his head and pulled him in for a hug and kissed him and everything. Oh my God, such an amazing moment. Made my heart flutter. Bret, full-blown heel, reuniting with his lovable brother Owen. That was the best. Yeah, Daniel is my homie from North Carolina. We went to a lot of shows together back in the day. Luger is another one, because Luger, man, I've had hard feelings towards him for a long time. And plus, WWE, he's got some heat. Now, Luger is in the same situation as Savage. You know, Savage kind of left, not in the same way as Luger, but close, to where it really, I think, took a blow to Vince. Where Luger kind of did it in a shadier way than Savage. Savage was at least up front. Hey, Vince, I'm leaving. I'm going down to the South. Luger kind of leaving in the middle of the night like that was really not a huge loss for WWE. But Daniel, you might even remember this. Pillman should go in for sure. And I think with Pillman, they're actually, I want to circle back to Luger in a second. But Pillman, I think will go in. I think they're waiting for Junior. I think they're waiting for Junior to get a little bit better and to see where he goes. Cause you know, he might go to AEW or something. So if they ever sign Brian Pillman Jr., I think they would rather bring Brian into the Hall of Fame so Junior can do the induction and accept the induction. Not that he can't do it now, but this is a guy who he's currently working with MLW. I could see AEW picking him up, and maybe WWE doesn't want to bring him in to do that if he's going to be on AEW TV. or, somebody else's TV, and maybe he's just not ready yet. So I think they're kind of biding their time with Pillman, and Pillman will get in. CM Punk, another guy. I mean, if he's on WWE backstage close enough, I think he'll get into the Hall of Fame as well. Luger is one of those guys, though, that Vince, he's one of the few guys that like never came back in. Vince fired him the night of the buyout with Jeff Jarrett, because Jeff Jarrett left in a shady way and Jeff Jarrett went in. But there's something about that Luger one that I think really rubs Vince the wrong way. Plus, Luger was instrumental in the demise of Miss Elizabeth, which I will never fucking forgive him for. And I know we're all adults and we're all responsible for our own actions. And Elizabeth was a grown woman who can make her own decisions. But I truly feel like that relationship with Lex is the reason she's dead. And if she would have dated anybody else, she might have survived. Not that she didn't have her problems and maybe her issues with drinking and pills and things like that, but that was just a horrible situation. Elizabeth was too good for the wrestling business, should not have been with a guy like Luger, and should not have left. Now, another thing I want to see if Daniel remembers, and I've talked about this before on the podcast, I remember years ago in 1995, I would call hotlines and I would get like news information. Some of them you would pay for, some of them you wouldn't. And there was this one hotline, Daniel, you got to help me. It was like it was out of Green. It was like a local one. And it was like a local number, and you would call it and you could hear all sorts of shit on like sports scores. You could hear updates on your favorite soap operas, all sorts of crazy shit you could just listen to on the phone. And one of them was wrestling news. And I remember weeks before, I actually remember SummerSlam. Before SummerSlam, there was a report that Luger was heading to WCW. And I remember the night that they turned Davey heel, he said in the ring on Raw, he's in the ring like Mabel or some shit, or Diesel. He's going to be like Diesel's tag team partner. He turned on Diesel. That's what it was. So he's in the ring with like men on a mission, but he has no partner. He said his tag team partner isn't here because he had to go to Atlanta. He said Atlanta right on fucking Raw. Who's in Atlanta? Who lives in Atlanta? Who lives in Atlanta? Bischoff and all those other guys. So that was kind of interesting. And then the hotline reports, one of them even said, I remember it clear as day. It said reports are right now that Lex Luger is probably already in WCW. And that was just a couple of days before SummerSlam. So I hear that and I'm like, fuck, they stole Luger. And then at SummerSlam, Luger shows up in the main event and helps out Diesel, who had been turned on by Davey right before then. You would think if he's coming back now, he's going to have a feud with Davey Boy. And then I think it was a week later. I think it was 8 days later, after SummerSlam, he debuted on Nitro. Or maybe it was 9 days after he worked a house show. That's what it was. He like worked a house show on a Saturday or something, and then showed up on Nitro on the very first one. So even back then, people talk about the Luger defection as a surprise, and I have no doubt that it surprised many people. But I kind of knew it. I think I was one of the only people that knew that he was going to WCW. Because with WWE rewriting history, the way they tell it is nobody had a clue. He shocked everyone. Where really, when you look at it, it made perfect sense. Luger was a guy penciled in to win the WWE title at WrestleMania 10. They had huge plans for him. He was the born-again Hogan. And then you fast forward a year and a half later, fans rejected him. Brett was put on top, and now he's reduced to being a tag team with the British Bulldog, which I liked. I've talked about them before too. Allied Powers were a really good-looking team. They had an underrated theme song. Very underrated theme music. I liked it. It was a mashup of Luger's theme and Davey's theme, and it worked. And I thought tag team gold around those two guys would have looked good. And I was into that. I think they got one title shot against Yoko and Owen. They didn't win. I thought they were a shoo-in. I thought two pieces of talent like that teaming up, two guys that were getting like world title shots prior to that, or at least world title contention, teaming up to form a tag team. Of course they're going to win the belts, and they never did. And Luger left. So that was a whole interesting situation back then. But I remember the word was out. People thought that Luger was going. I remember. Like it was yesterday. Thank you, Daniel. Okay, what do you say, Daniel? It was a Sprint hotline. You had to call a number and then dial the department for your choice to hear the pre-recorded message. It was updated twice. Okay, that vaguely rings a bell, but that's how far back this thing goes. I remember calling that hotline from the payphone at school, like senior year. So that's how old that thing is. I remember that, and that's where I heard Luger going to WCW was on that very same hotline like a year later. So yeah, I remember that. Crazy. Steve Milan, good to see you in here, man. Appreciate it. Happy 10th anniversary, Greg. For here is to 20 more years. 20 more years. 60 plus year old good mic work. up here, drinking Metamucil on the rocks. Just what we need. I still remember your anti-TNA rant debut episode. Excuse me. They got me really into your show and still proudly listen to it. Sunglasses emoji. Thank you very much, Steven. Yeah, those were crazy times. The only other guy that I cannot understand not being in yet is Sid. Sid is awesome. I can't either. I think people just get annoyed with Sid, I think, because he's such a damn weirdo. The guy had 2 Mania matches, or both main events, and I'm not sure if he will ever go in. I think he will. They'll get to Sid. I think Sid's a name that they'll get to, because they have to get to Sid. Vince at one time loved Sid. When he came back, it seemed like Vince didn't give a shit about Sid in 95 because he had Diesel. But then in 96, when Sid came back and replaced the Warrior, I was there. I was there for Sid's comeback in Joe Louis Arena for a house show. He came back before appearing on Raw, filling in for the Warrior. And I was like, oh, that's random. And then sure enough, 2 days later, because it was a Saturday house show, 2 days later, he appears on Raw and says, I'm the new replacement for the Warrior at International Incident. Remember we watched International Incident, Daniel, at your brother's house, and you beat up your nephew? That was great shit. But Sid was a champion. He main evented 2 WrestleManias facing The Undertaker and Hulk Hogan. And he's a 2-time WWE champion. He, I think, will go in. He definitely should go in. But I don't think he'd be like a headliner type of guy. And I don't think Sid's weird and everything, but he hasn't done anything to like severely burn bridges. Hell, they brought him back on Monday Night Raw. What year was it? You guys got to help me. It was like 2011 or something in this past decade. Sid has appeared on Raw. So I don't think there's any horrible heat there and nothing that would really prevent them. I do, however, think there's a lot of guys like Sid, like Rick Martel, Bam Bam Bigelow, and others, Demolition, Pillman, that are there and that will go in, but they just haven't gotten to them yet. And that's when a lot of fans get mad when somebody goes in, well, how are they going in before so-and-so? It's just the way they do it, you know? There's no rhyme or reason. There's no formula. There's no rule that says, hey, if you win more championships than this guy, you have to go in. It's whoever they fucking feel like putting in. And a lot of times names just don't come up, or names do come up and they're like, maybe next year kind of thing. You know, that's the way those meetings work. It has to be, it's that casual. It's probably that nonchalant. You know, who can we put in that'll make the best class or whatever? So there is kind of like a group of wrestlers that will go in that are already criminally overdue for going in, that'll just slowly trickle in as we go. And in most cases, I hope a lot of these guys are still alive. You know, I want to see Sid alive for his induction. Rick Martel, I think he'll live for many years. He should be fine. But guys like Vader, guys like, well, Bam Bam died so young, so early on, he would have been tough to pull off. But guys like Vader and Macho Man Randy Savage and a few others should have been here for their Hall of Fame induction. So I hope they don't drag their feet too long on Sid and any of those other names as well, because I can't live forever. Oh, yeah, the Heath Slater. Well, he's a 2-time WWE champion is what I meant. My thoughts on the Dusty Rhodes and Ric Flair rivalry are all positive ones. That was one of the best, bloodiest feuds of all time. And that was what birthed the Hard Times promo. And they had some wars that picked up a couple of times in between as well. I mean, the Horsemen and Rhodes, that's why I always think that Cody being with Arn is so damn weird. And I've been waiting for Arn just to stick it to him, as only the Horsemen can. Do I think they will put a woman in what? The Hall of Fame? I think there might be a woman or two in there already. Just a guess. Missy Hyatt going in, I'm going to go no on her. She wasn't in WWE. She was a big personality in WCW, but I don't think she's WWE Hall of Fame material. She's kind of a skank. Holy shit, hold on. I might have just rumbled there. Maybe not. We had 2 earthquakes last week, and I felt like we just might have experienced a small one. That might just be my neighbors below me. Anyway, sorry to interrupt. But yeah, Missy Hyatt, I'm probably going to vote no on her. I mean, she was such a slut. I'm pretty sure she hooked up with Jim Ross. So Missy Hyatt did not care. I know she's got a Kayfabe Commentaries interview out with Sean that's pretty revealing. I think the one with Sonny was too, and they basically just talk about what hoes they were. And yeah, Missy was. I'm gonna go no on Missy Hyatt. I think technically, based on WWE's criteria, even though she was never in WWE, I think she did enough to be considered maybe a Hall of Famer. But no, I'm going to say no on her. Wendy Richter is in. She went a few years ago, if I remember right. Worst wrestling injury, toxic. That one's up there. Sid breaking his leg. I still can't watch that without vomiting. The Joey Mercury one was real bad. I know there's been a bunch, and there's a few Spike Dudley bumps that I wonder how that man lived. But yeah, probably Sid's leg, Joey Mercury's injury. I mean, Austin's was bad, but maybe not physically or visually as bad to where you're just like, oh, I mean, it looks gnarly, but it's not one where you're like covering your eyes and shit. Whereas Sid and Joey Mercury was just a whole level of fucking disgusting. Oh, sorry. I thought you meant like, do you think they'll put a woman in? Did you just say woman? Okay. Oh, yeah, sorry. Do you think they will put woman in? I thought you said you would put a woman in. Like, yeah, dude, they'll put plenty of women. My bad. Yes, woman, Nancy Benoit, unfortunately, no. I don't think they will, and that's what sucks because she deserves to go in. Absolutely. And she should go in, but WWE is not going to touch that Benoit shit. If, as far as they're concerned, it never happened. Like, they do not want to touch it. They don't want to go there. That's why I think Benoit not only fucked over his wife, but his son, David, who at one time I think had aspirations to be a wrestler. AEW might touch him, but WWE will not, just based on his last name, and that's not his fault, because WWE will, they're not going to bring him in and then not mention that he's a second generation star. Just look at his face; he looks exactly like Chris. So I think AEW might have bigger balls on them to do that, where WWE just won't. So, and Nancy is a good example of that, to where I don't think they'll put her in the Hall of Fame. Not that she doesn't deserve it, but that her last name is Benoit. And you're only going to remember her for that and the circumstances of her death, even if you try. Even if you try to showcase and highlight her career only, and you make that the focal point, and it's all about her wrestling career, no mention of Chris, no mention of marriage, no mention of anything, it's still going to be impossible to have that moment for her and to have her sister induct her, because all that's going to do is draw attention to the Benoit murders, which is WWE doesn't want. And because of that, certain things are going to suffer, like Nancy going to the Hall of Fame, like David having a realistic chance of being a wrestler. He's not. He's never going to be at WrestleMania having a match. He's just not. And that sucks. It's not fair. It's definitely not fair. But my bad for misreading that. I'm sorry for being an idiot and not realizing that you said woman, not a woman. Oh, man. Rob Van Dam. I think he'll go in. He's a Hall of Famer. He might need to cool it for a bit. Right now, he's going a little bit crazy. But Rob Van Dam is great. But he's another guy to where, he did not put up with WWE shit. So with him, I can see WWE being spiteful and just saying, he didn't cooperate when he was here, so we're not going to put him in the Hall of Fame. But guess what? Rob Van Dam, to me, does not appear like a guy who gives a fuck about the Hall of Fame. I'm sure he'd probably go in if they invited him, but he ain't never going to be losing sleep over, he's just too cool. Rob Van Dam doesn't care. I love the stories of him just kind of doing his own thing. I know a lot of guys like Rob Van Dam, and I would like to think I'd be similar to that. I'm just not going to let this company strip me of my individuality and just mentally rape you like they do everybody else. He tells stories. He just goes sitting out his car. I just don't want to be around anybody. I'm going to go sit in my car and chill out or take a nap or whatever. And when they want him to go to the Tribute to the Troops show, and he's like, I'm not going. And Vince couldn't process the information. Well, Rob, I think you'll find that the experience will be very gratifying, and so I guess we'll see you there. And he's like, no, Vince, I'm not going. Oh, you're not? Okay, well, I think you'll like the flight. Yeah, we'll see you there. You're gonna really love Iraq. Vince, I'm not going. All right, Rob, we'll see you on the plane. Vince could not grasp that this man is saying to you, I am not going. Like, what's not registering? Is any bells going off at all, Vince? Come on. I am not going to this. I don't care what you say. And I don't care if it's going to give me a D push or something. I don't care. I'm sticking to my guns, and I'm going to do what I want to do. And you're not going to force me to do something that I don't want to do. So I appreciate RVD doing that when so many other wrestlers wouldn't have been able to be in the position to do that. They just submit, and they just let this company drag them anywhere they want to go, because if they don't cooperate, it's going to affect your spot. And that's kind of what sucks in life, is that you can do everything right. You can have all the drive, motivation, and ambition in the world. You can work your ass off to achieve your goals, work out, train, become the best that you can be. And it all crumbles down to nothing just because of WWE management and the stupid ass reasons for why they like or dislike a wrestler. And to me, that would be highly discouraging if I sacrifice my entire life to become something only to get one or two writers who don't like me and can control my entire career and livelihood. That's not a good thing. I feel like you're at the mercy of these people, and that's not fair, especially when you have so much ability and you should be used to your full potential. But yet, if you say the wrong thing behind the scenes, well, the creative's just going to sweep you under the rug and not use you, or even when they do, give you a bunch of dumb shit to do. I'm glad that Rob Van Dam didn't fall into that that way and let them do that to him. He was his own man. He did what he wanted. And there's only a few amount of guys who can do that. Jericho was another one. Brock Lesnar. We're going to do what we want. Take it or leave it. And they do it. And if I was ever a wrestler, I wouldn't aspire to main event WrestleMania. I would aspire to be that. I would aspire to have enough value and to be respected enough to where I can do whatever the fuck I want. And these idiots running the place can't tell me what to do with my own life. I'm a grown-ass man. So those are the wrestlers that I would aspire to be. I would aspire to be Rob Van Dam, Jericho, Brock, Rock, guys like that. Guys that can just do what they want, you know? Maybe Sean. Sean can definitely do what he wants to. I can't see the Sandman going in. He was a great act in ECW. That was fun. Metallica and the whole beer can smashing over the head. But Sandman is an asshole. And if I was in WWE and I made the decision, I would never allow him in. He's just a racist, sexist, homophobic piece of shit. And I don't like him at all. Fuck the Sandman. Steiner Brothers, I would love to see them go in. Good suggestion. I don't know what their deal is. I know Scott Steiner is a little bit wacky. Maybe WWE doesn't want to touch him. But in the meantime, Rick is fine. You know, nobody's ever had an issue with Robbie at all. So if you bring in him and you can get Scott together enough to not be a psycho, I'd like to see him go in wearing their U of M jackets in their induction speech. That would be great. Steiners should definitely go in. They didn't have a great run though in WWE. Felt like it just wasn't. I thought it was going to be a match made in heaven, but it wasn't. You know, Steiners and LOD, you know, some of those teams didn't do what we thought they would do, and they're highly marketable. But their WWE runs were minimal. I think they had a much bigger following and run, their own theme music, shit like that in WCW. Steiner line, remember? Oh my God. But yeah, they're definitely Hall of Famers. Ken Patera probably won't go in. He's a dick anyway. Fuck him. Saw him in a shoot interview once, RF video shoot interview. He basically, might have been Feinstein doing the interview, so I don't care if he stretched him. But he basically threatened to beat up the interviewer. Like, dude, fuck you. You know, you old ass bastard. I mean, he did. They didn't even ask too crazy of a question. He just was a dick. He was just an arrogant dick. Billy Jack Haynes was kind of like that too. Just still, like, even at their old ass age, they're still full of P and V. They're always looking to fight and argue and shit. I'm like, what's wrong with you? Grow the fuck up. Magnum would be nice, but again, such a minor or no WWE run at all. I'll tell you what about Magnum, though. Had that accident not happened, I'm curious how long it would have taken for Vince to get him. If Vince would he remained loyal? Would he have been like Sting? I don't think he would have. I think there was just too much marketability there. I would think they would have lured him up there, and they would have made him a star to the level of Hogan. Whether or not it would work, I don't know. Magnum TA gets up there and has to deal with all the politics and shit like that. Maybe people would have put a stop to his push or whatever. And he would have been no more, maybe the highest level he would have ever gotten would be like a Razor Ramon level or something. But based on how hot he was, with that Tom Selleck look, you know, and the mustache and the body and the hair and the motorcycles, you know, women drooled over this guy. I mean, he was almost as good looking as me. Almost. You know, so that's a pretty good looking guy right there. Good looking cat. So I would have been more interested to see how he would have done in his career without the accident that crippled him. Now, had he stayed in the NWA, he would have been champ, 100%. Could have been a big star there. It could have been NWA's answer to Hogan. So instead of maybe Vince grabbing him and taking him up there, he could have actually helped tip the scales, or at least even out the scales. Maybe not tip them, but at least help the NWA. Because I think even with Magnum exploding as a superstar, bad business decisions would have still been made by Jim and David and stuff. But he definitely would have helped the NWA's cause, and you would have put another big main eventer on, you know, your team there with the Dusties and the Flairs and all that, and he would have been huge. I'd like to see him go into the Hall of Fame. Yeah, I would. But again, you know, WWE, who knows? I still think it's way too early for CM Punk. CM Punk should be like 10 years from now. So I think it's just a little early to mention him. Cornette should go in, but I think Cornette's burning his bridges just by being a psycho. Russo, no, I don't think he should go in, and I don't think WWE would put him in. But Cornette as a manager alone should go in. You know, and then he should also go in just for his overall contributions to the business. But Jim flies off the rails a lot, and I don't think any of the language and the narrative and the objective that he pushes on his podcast is anything WWE wants to touch right now. They did a little bit with him when he didn't he come in to induct somebody in the Hall of Fame a couple years ago, and he did the table for three. I think that's maybe as far as they're going to go with Jim until maybe he settles down a little bit. But based on his wrestling accomplishments, for sure, should have probably already been in the Hall of Fame. Probably would have done him some good to be in the Hall of Fame already. That way he can be a complete psycho all he wants, and you don't have to worry about it. I'd be into Andy Kaufman going in, celebrity wing. We got some stupid celebrities in the Hall of Fame. Drew Carey, because of that one Royal Rumble appearance, he's in the Hall of Fame. Why not Kaufman? Do it now while Lawler's alive. Totally. I don't think Sabu will go in. He's another one just like Sandman that's just a racist piece of shit. Oh my God, some of the things he says on social media. You know, fuck Sabu. I don't care if he goes in the Hall of Fame, and I don't care if he dies tomorrow. I really don't like him. Slick, how easy. Shout out to Slick. Yeah, Slick was a man. I'd be into that. Oh yeah, Rock and Roll Express. That's who he inducted. Thank you for that, Sam. Couldn't remember. Santino Marella, probably not. Paul Heyman for sure. Mabel, I think so. Although I remember when Mabel died, WWE didn't tribute him at all on TV. No graphic at the beginning of Raw, no nothing, which surprised me. Because he was in and out of the company like at least 3 different times. He should have been in. He should go in. Motorhead should definitely go in. Absolutely. Again, would have been nice if they would have gone in prior to Lemmy's death. Oh, you know what? Speaking of Motorhead, this movie was on TV maybe like 3 weeks ago. I was channel surfing and I saw it. Have any of you guys seen the 90s movie Airheads with Brendan Fraser and Steve Buscemi? Michael McKean is in there. Bunch of other people. And they're like rock stars that hold everybody hostage in a radio station so they'll play their album. Well, there's a scene in the movie, I didn't even know this. They're like in the crowd, and there's members of the crowd and the audience shouting out. One of them is Lemmy. And I remember seeing that movie years ago and not even knowing that was him and realizing, I'm like, holy shit, that's him. He's like, I played Dungeons and Dragons in high school, or he says something like that, and that's totally him. So anyway, cameo by Lemmy in Airheads. I don't think anybody's ever brought up Arsenio Hall before. Arsenio, I don't think made any WWE appearances, but man, he had a shitload of the wrestlers on his show back in the day. I used to watch it. I used to watch Arsenio back in the day, man. He had Savage and Rude and Hogan, and everybody was on Arsenio. So for that reason alone, he should go in. And David, right above you, I think Regis would be another one because he did a bunch of stuff too. Wrestlers were on his show constantly. He made at least one WrestleMania appearance. That's 7, maybe another one. Regis would have been better than Drew Carey. Arsenio also would have been better than Drew Carey. Haku, I would love to see go in. Again, Haku's another guy where I don't think WWE has anything against him. I just think he's a name that hasn't been brought up yet. Yeah, these are all good. These are all really good suggestions, for sure. I don't think Santino, though. I like Santino, super entertaining, but some of that shit was a little old. Oh, man, I don't know, Daniel. Outside of the Silverdome was my favorite arena to watch wrestling in person. I'd probably say Greensboro. I think Greensboro was where we saw our best moments. Charlotte, too. Well, actually, you know what? Maybe Fayetteville. It's a North Carolina city, for sure. I don't know, though. We saw some good ones in Richmond and Norfolk. I just got to think about the best matches that we saw. Because I saw some great shit in Virginia, man. But Greensboro gave us a lot. I know we saw a couple of pay-per-views there. Unforgiven and King of the Ring. We saw some house shows there. Plenty of Monday Night Raws. Might go Greensboro Coliseum on that one. It's one I remember the most anyway. But Fayetteville, that little ass Crown Coliseum, man. If I ever get back to North Carolina, I should go back to the Crown Coliseum. So that dirty little building is still there. Holding wrestling shows. Yeah, I'd probably go Greensboro or Fayetteville on that one, just based on what we saw there together. Chris, thank you for $2 more, brother. Appreciate it. What about Scott Steiner in the Hall of Fame? Yeah, somebody just mentioned the Steiner brothers. I'd put the Steiner brothers in before Scott Steiner, but Scott Steiner's body of work probably warrants a Hall of Fame induction. But again, he's so nuts. I don't know. He can't be bringing his freaks with him to Hall of Fame, but he might. I'd rather go Steiner brothers first and then Scott Steiner second. Chris Leon, do I think Evolution will be in the Hall of Fame? Absolutely. Triple H will be a 9-time Hall of Famer by the time that's all over. Yeah, Evolution will go in. But again, I think we're years from that. Maybe after like a Randy Orton retirement or something. Because, that's another thing you got to think about Randy. Triple H went into the Hall of Fame prior to going in by himself. So do you think that'll be the same case for Randy Orton? Do you think Orton will go in Evolution prior to going in individually? I say no. I say you wait until Orton is done and then you put them in. But you might not be able to wait that long because there's a certain member of Evolution that might not be with us at that point. We all know who he is. So yeah, maybe they go. Maybe Orton does what Triple H did and goes in prior to going in alone. Because Orton's a guy that, aside from an injury forcing him out of the ring, I think he can wrestle kind of like a Rock or a Cena or somebody. He can kind of be mostly retired, but come back in to work a match every now and then. So I can see that happening forever. So it just depends on when they decide to put him in. Maybe when his next contract is up and then he moves into a full-time, part-time basis, then you stick him in with Evolution while we still have Flair here. I don't know. But otherwise, I'd probably wait on that one. Doink is a tough one because the original Doink was Matt Bourne, who did a great job with it. But Matt Bourne was another guy prior to his death, was kind of an unsavory type of dude. I was never a really big Matt Bourne fan. I remember I have matches of him from Portland when he was coming in and stuff, and I always remembered thinking that he was such a Roddy Piper knockoff. He had the same promo style as Piper. He had the same voice as Piper. He basically emulated him, almost like Benoit emulated Dynamite, although not to that extent. But I almost kind of thought he was like a cheap knockoff, and I didn't like it. Now, when he became Doink, he was great in that role with the laughing and the voice and all of that. But, after he left WWE, they continued the Doink character, and they put Steve Lombardi and Steve Kern and all those guys. So if you brought them all back together to collectively accept the induction, that's the only way that would really work. Because the original was Matt Bourne, and Matt Bourne's dead. And if you bring in the guys that played it after him, which there was more than just those two, I think it was 4 or 5 guys. I don't know how you really work that. So Doink might be disqualified based on the fact that it's a character that multiple men played. I don't know if we've seen that case before. Somebody going in that was played by more than one guy. I don't think so. So, or like long term anyway. So yeah, Doink might be a disqualification. He might be, maybe Doink's like one of those legacy guys. Don't they still do that? They throw a chunk in at a time, little video package, 30-second piece on who they were. Maybe the Doink character goes in. That could be it. Barry Horowitz, I'm going to say no. The Von Erichs did go in. Yeah, Von Erichs went in. Remember Kevin? Von Erich did the induction, and he called the new day new gay guys. He goes, these new gay guys. Hysterical. Yeah, Von Erichs are in, and rightfully so. They had a gnarly Dark Side of the Ring too. And that DVD, the Triumph and Tragedy of WCW, was pretty sad. Yeah, I caught Abyss on the Edge doc. Got a shot of Abyss backstage when Edge was making his Royal Rumble return. And I was like, look at there's Abyss. I loved that. I love the little thing they did, if you guys saw that, with Edge and Jeff Jarrett, where they pretended not to know each other. And then people were standing there like, do you guys really not know each other? They wrestled, and there was a title change, I believe, even for the Intercontinental title really early on in Edge's WWE run. I think he won the title in Toronto at a house show and dropped the belt back to Jarrett, if my memory serves, back in 98 or 99. Must have been 98. Yeah, 98, I think. So the fact that they were like pretending that they never met, I thought was really cool between the two. Andrew Pike, thank you, man, for the $5. Thank you for all your hard work, Greg. Content creators like you keep me sane and happy and well during these uncertain times. I appreciate it, man. Hey, there's certain YouTubers and YouTube shit that I watch too. I feel the same way. Even though I am a creator, I feel like there are people that I can watch to kind of keep me busy and occupy my time as well. So I'm very, very happy to be here and very, very happy to be doing this with you guys. Excuse me. Man, we got a lot of good Hall of Fame ideas here. Sable's one I could see happening. Now, there was a time when I would have said, Sable, no way. I cannot believe that Sable, do you guys know that Sable appeared on Nitro? Do you remember that? When she left WWE, she was being such a snot to everybody there. Everybody hated her. Attitude problem. Fucking prima donna. Making a ton of money she didn't deserve. And then acts like an asshole. Finally, they get rid of her, and she shows up on Nitro, and they have her on camera. What a bitch. But then she got with Brock Lesnar, and they brought her back in. I could not believe that they not only brought her back in 2003, but they put her in an angle with Vince. He's like making out with her and shit, and she was doing stuff with Tori Wilson and that whole deal. I'm like, man, I guess, there's no such thing as really burning your bridge, and things can be patched back up. And I would assume that Rena has been with Brock sometimes since he's been back in the company now for 8 years. I'm sure that she's been around, and I don't think there's any bad blood there. So they should put Sable in. I wonder why they haven't. Maybe she doesn't want to go in. That's possible. But yes, Sunny in. So if Sunny's in, Sable should definitely go in, because even though I didn't like either one of them back in the day, or I don't like Sunny now. I did kind of like her back in the day. I think Sable has a bigger resume because she actually got in the ring and took bumps. Even though she sucked, she still got in the ring and took bumps. Sunny never did that. So yeah, Sable is absolutely a Hall of Famer. Can't see Gino and Chris going in, no. Fabulous Rougeau Brothers, yes. I love Fabulous Rougeau Brothers. I am a mark for Ray Rougeau. Tough bastard. Still does commentary for WWE, the French commentary team. You see him every now and then on pay-per-views. Love me some Ray Rougeau. And Jacques, of course, was a total weirdo, and Mountie and Quebecer and all that stuff. Yeah, Fabulous Rougeau Brothers, I loved them. I was a believer in them, man. I remember as a kid, when they were baby faces. Like before they turned heel and got with Jimmy Hart and did the whole American Boys thing, they were just soft-spoken French baby faces, and I loved them. I thought they were like a really good, kind of believable team. WWE had great teams. Rougeaus, Bees, Bulldogs, Hearts, Demolition. They had some teams back in the day that could work. Young Stallions, Islanders. Man, so many good teams back then. Don't think Val Venus is going to go in. And if you guys want to get a really big laugh, proceed at your own risk, and you have been warned, go find Val Venus on Twitter and just read like 5 posts. You'll see all you need to see there. Earthquake should go in. Adrian Adonis should go. I remember when Adrian Adonis died. That was sad. I saw his hair match with Piper. Lillian Garcia, sure. Earthquake, sure. Miz, of course. Eddie Gilbert. Probably not. Probably not. I remember when Eddie died too. He died in 95. And to me, like, I always credit Pillman with really starting the snowball of the deaths. Because in Pillman in 97, then it was like everybody. It was like one a week. But there were a few. Prior to that, there was Brody. There was Eddie Gilbert. There was Kerry Von Erich. There was a lot of deaths. Gino Hernandez. Lots of stuff. So there were tragedies, and all the Von Erichs. There were a lot of tragedies by then, but it really felt like it got out of control after Pillman. But really, you could probably trace that back a little further and say Eddie Gilbert on that one, because he died so young. And he was smart as shit too, man. He had stuff to offer. Italian Stallion, yeah. He helped produce a lot of guys. Crush, would like to see him go in. Not sure if Brian Adams will ever go in then. Or go in, though. He was one of the guys that left. Daniel's still here. Daniel, me and you saw Crush's last match in WWE, and he headed off to WCW, and he would die shortly after that. They don't like heavy metal. They don't like rock and roll. All they want to listen to is Barry Manilow, and who wouldn't? That's right. That's awesome. I should go in the Hall of Fame? No, I would never accept that. I'm not going to go in the Hall of Fame. They got to pay me more. Although I could eBay my plaque. That would be nice. No, I'm kidding. Dr. Death and Kamala. Feel really bad for Kamala. Because he had some serious health problems there, and I think WWE could have done better by him and maybe helped him out a little bit. That's for sure. But as far as Hall of Fame, I don't know. He's probably one of those guys. It's just one of those weird situations where, yeah, he could go in the Hall of Fame, but he probably won't. Just the way it is. Unless they, like I said, they stick him in that legacy wing, or they just, you just went to Val Venus's Twitter. Glad you did. Toxic Banana. Butterbean has the credentials based on WWE's thinking. You know, they put people with one appearance in the Hall of Fame. So if Snoop's going in, why can't Butterbean? So sure, but probably not. I'm going to say Butterbean would go in based on WWE's criteria, but I just don't feel like they put him in. Demolition and Rick Martel, I mention them every time. Of course they would. I don't know why they didn't mention Rick Rude in the Hall of Fame either. He's another guy that, you know, left kind of funny. Going on Nitro like that. Corporal Kirshner, no. Umaga, probably not. Not with the circumstances of his death and his short run. I'd probably say no. Chuck Norris in the Hall of Fame? Chuck Norris is already in the Hall of Fame. Chuck Norris got in before Andre. What are you even asking that question for? Transferring heat? You crazy? Thank you, Robert Kane, newer fan and subscriber here since your Wednesday Warfare collaboration with Brian Zane. Oh, yeah, that was last summer. That was fun. But I've gone back and watched older content since we've had so much free time. Here's to 10 more years. Appreciate it, man. 10 more. 10 more to YouTube. Well, we're pushing 3 hours now, and that was kind of my limit, so I'll probably think about wrapping this up here. But I certainly appreciate all the hanging out tonight. Bob Holly, sure, he'll go in. Dixie Carter, I don't know. You guys are making up funny ones now. But yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and roll up out of here. This is a long day. If you guys are still clamoring for more and you didn't watch my video earlier on today, it's right down in the description below. Click that link or just go over to my channel and watch the most recent video. You can check that out. And you don't have to wait long. I'll be back up here in 48 hours immediately following Raw this Monday, which apparently will be a live show. I'll be up here to discuss whatever we saw on that show and any wrestling news that's going on at the time, and the latest on the coronavirus and the WWE taping schedule. And now we got to start looking at Money in the Bank. So we've got an AEW, we've got a TNT Championship Tournament on our lap, we've got an Elite Deletion, and then in WWE, we've got a Bray Wyatt and Braun Strowman program. We don't know who Drew's working with yet. We're going to start building towards Money in the Bank. And we got a Charlotte and Io Shirai match coming up at some point. So we're somehow getting wrestling content, even though there shouldn't be any. Hopefully we'll have a good amount to talk about in the upcoming weeks. So yeah, thank you again, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and bail out of here now. Once again, thank you for an amazing 10 years. It's been great. I really, really hope we can do this 10 more. I hope I'm sitting here, you know, fucking 53 years old and we're having this conversation. That would be really awesome. So hopefully we can continue this for many years to come and have a good time and continue to enjoy wrestling. So you guys be good. Take care of yourselves, whatever you're doing in this pandemic. I hope that you're surviving and getting through. Stephen Myers, I will add that to my sound off here at the end. Thank you for $5 more. Greg, just sending a message to remind you that I sent a Patreon message. No rush. Oh, you did? Okay, I'll go over there and check that out. Thank you, man, for the reminder. So yeah, you guys have a great night. Thanks for hanging out, and I will catch you Monday immediately following Monday Night Raw. Y'all be good. Peace.